Chapter 720. Not to mention history, such incidents were not uncommon in recent years. Dongqing had suffered many disasters in recent years, and people often traded their children for food. What was the difference between that and eating human flesh? The 4 tribes of Nanman and the 3 tribes of the northern borderline had come to the Central Plains to rob and kill people. Eating human flesh was a common occurrence. Huang Song sighed worriedly and said, "It's not uncommon, but I don't want to see it if possible." A glint flashed across his eyes. Perhaps, only a prosperous and peaceful world could completely put an end to this kind of tragedy. That's the way of the world. If it could be stopped, who would want it to happen? Jiang Pengji calmly looked in the direction of Jiamen Pass. Who knew how many lives it would take to break through the pass between the steep mountain gates? Cheng Jing glanced at Jiang Pengji out of the corner of his eye. His evaluation of her improved. The wind was strong on the mountain, and Feng Zhan was afraid of the cold. He tightened his cloak around his body, and his lips, which had lost blood all year round, turned a little green. Jiamen Pass is easy to defend and hard to attack. If the people guarding the pass refuse to come out, we'll have to pay a heavy price if we force our way in. But we can't use the corpses as firewood to burn down Jiamen Pass, can we? Feng Zhan took a deep breath and coughed into his fist. But if we don't do that, we'll have to force our way in, and I don't know how much time we'll have to waste. Jiang Pengji looked around and observed the terrain. Her lips were thin, and when she pursed them, she gave off an extremely stubborn feeling. She asked, "How long do you think it'll take for the alliance to break through Jiamen Pass?" Feng Ju stood beside Huang Song, one hand on his forehead, and carefully looked in the direction of Jiamen Pass. The road before Jiamen Pass is narrow and steep. With the alliance's strength, we can probably break through in a day or 2 if we force our way in. If Jiamen Pass is well guarded, it'll take us a day or 2. Feng Ju's lips curled into a sarcastic smile. He added, "It's a pity that the alliance doesn't agree with each other. They'll retreat as soon as they see the terrain of Jiamen Pass." Why did they retreat as soon as they saw the terrain of Jiamen Pass? The terrain of the Jiamen Pass was steep and narrow, making it easy to defend and difficult to attack. The vanguard troops that rushed at the front almost died. Who would be willing to be the vanguard? Even if they were willing to fight, they would probably be conserving their strength and slacking off on the battlefield. When Jiang Pengji and Huang Song came out, the alliance was having a meeting. They were discussing who would be the vanguard. Thinking of those people arguing, Feng Ju rubbed his forehead, feeling a headache coming on. He could still hear them arguing. Cheng Jing said, "If we don't solve this problem, Jiamen Pass will hold us back for 10 days, maybe even longer." Half a month? Prince Changshou's army had already invaded the borders of Qinzhou and was advancing step by step. Who knew what the situation would be like after half a month? At this moment, the alliance's main tent was already in a heated argument. No one wanted to be the vanguard and waste their strength for nothing. However, this time, they didn't dare to use Yang Jian as cannon fodder or a scapegoat. One had to know that Yang Jian had a temper as well. Last time at the brain banquet, he had let loose a torrent of abuse. Even now, they didn't dare mess with Yang Jian. Many forces tacitly began to retreat, trying their best to get others to withdraw. The forces with fewer soldiers complained about how poor they were. If they were to die at Jiamen Pass, how would they be able to face their families? The forces with more soldiers also cried. They claimed that they had more people, but they were all just small fries. Their combat ability was not as strong as the elite troops, so they weren't suitable to be the vanguard. Su Bei sat in the seat of honor, listening to everyone's arguments. He felt like his head was about to explode. His face was getting more and more livid. Su Fei, who was sitting in the seat of honor, was secretly gloating. "Look, you're trying to steal the position of alliance leader from me? Now you're going to suffer." It wasn't easy to be the alliance leader, especially when the hearts of the people were scattered like sand. It was even harder to lead. After arguing for a day, no conclusion was reached. In the end, they parted on bad terms. Jiang Pengji brought Feng Zhen and Yang Si back to the camp. Coincidentally, they bumped into Lu Shi, who had just returned from the main camp. "Father, I have a question." She led Little White to Lu Shi. "Father, do you have time now?" Lu Shi smiled warmly. "As long as it's my Lanting's business, I'm always free." Yang Si and Feng Zhan felt like they had been humiliated by the fake father and daughter. "Father, How much do you know about Meng Zhan from Cangzhou? She asked. Meng Zhan. Lu Shi frowned when he heard the name of his ex-brother-in-law and good friend, who was now his arch-enemy. His tone was cold. Meng Zhan and I used to be classmates, but we broke off our friendship because of your mother and aunt. We don't have much contact now, so we don't know much. Lanting, why are you suddenly mentioning this person? Did you find something when you went out to survey the terrain? Is it related to Meng Zhan? Jiang Pengji said, there are new burn marks at Jiamen Pass. I'm guessing that Prince Changshu used corpses as fuel to break through the pass so quickly. Maybe the person who suggested this plan was Meng Zhan. That's why I want to know more about him. Lu Shi smiled after he heard that. It does sound like Meng Zhan's doing. He's always been like that. On the surface, he's kind and gentle, but in the dark, he's ruthless and vicious. Lu Shi snorted and said, when I was friends with him, I didn't see this side of him. When he was young, he had the reputation of being a gentleman. However, things change very hard to predict. The Meng family has internal strife. If Meng Zhan doesn't fight, he'll die. When he was young, Meng Zhan was indeed an amazing gentleman. However, time can change a person beyond recognition. Meng Zhan had changed when he was in that kind of environment. Lu Shi didn't see it, so he thought Meng Zhan had always been good. Recommending Meng Zhan and letting his wife's sister, Gu Zhan, marry a werewolf, was one of the few blind decisions Lu Shi had made in his life. Lu Shi said, the internal strife in the Meng family is quite serious. If Meng Zhan can stand out, he must be a scheming person. Jiang Pengji frowned and asked Lu Shi about the outcome of the alliance meeting. Lu Shi sneered. A bunch of cowards. Everyone wants to make someone else their scapegoat. What can they expect? After saying goodbye to Lu Shi, Jiang Pengji returned to her tent and spaced out. Let's put ourselves in Meng Zhan's shoes. If Jing Rong and Zi Shi were Meng Zhan and you helped Prince Changshu conquer Jiamen Pass, what would you do? Feng Zhan and Yang Si looked at each other. From Prince Changshu's point of view, Meng Zhan would buy time and defeat the alliance. Jiamen Pass was a trap. It was enough to intensify the internal strife in the alliance. However, it wasn't enough to intensify the strife. They had to leave a backup plan. Yang Si had worked for Prince Changshu for a while, so he had some understanding of the prince. However, all of Prince Changshu's plans seemed to be the work of the Mengs. When it came to understanding the Mengs, they had to think of Meng Hun. Chapter 721. My lord. Not long after, Meng Hun appeared in the tent wearing a full suit of armor. His forehead was still beaded with sweat. Stand up. No need for formalities, Jiang Pengji said to Meng Hun. I called you here because of the Mengs. You've worked for the Mengs for many years and know them well enough. I want to hear your opinion. Jiang Pengji got straight to the point and briefly explained what had happened at Jiamen Pass and her own speculation. Meng Hun was deep in thought. Based on his understanding of Meng Zhan, his plan couldn't be that simple. He was an experienced general after all. I can't say for sure. But Meng Zhan is a scheming man. He's good at building up his base step by step. He's unpredictable. According to you two gentlemen, Jiamen Pass could hold the alliance back for 10 days to half a month. Would Prince Changshu be able to overcome so many obstacles and invade the imperial city of Qinzhou in half a month? If he can't, it'll only take a day or two for the alliance to break through Jiamen Pass and catch up with Prince Changshu's army. When the time comes, the two armies will fight each other. It's hard to say who will win. Feng Zhan and Yang Si had the same idea. Prince Changshu must have a backup plan. Jiang Pengji pointed at the table and said confidently, he's probably splitting up. The three of them nodded. They all believed that was the case. Using the main force to attract the alliance's attention, and secretly sending some of the elites to attack the imperial city of Qinzhou. If that's the case, the imperial city is in danger. Feng Zhan was always serious when it came to business. He didn't look like his usual playful self. He said, Prince Changshu must have calculated the time. Maybe when the alliance breaks through Jiamen Pass, Prince Changshu will break through the imperial city of Qinzhou and capture the emperor. Then he'll threaten the emperor with his life and force him to abdicate the throne. That way. Before Feng Zhan could finish his sentence, everyone's faces in the tent darkened. If Prince Changshu really had this plan, the alliance would be in an awkward position. Jiang Pengji rubbed her brows. She told them even worse news. I might know why the Mengs are helping Prince Changsha. Feng Zhen and Yang Si were stunned. They didn't know why Jiang Pengji suddenly brought this up. Meng Han finally understood. He clenched his fists, his face grim, and the hatred in his heart almost rushed out of his throat. For Meng Liang. Yes, it should be about that. Meng Zhan probably suspects that we have something to do with Meng Liang's death. If Prince Changsha becomes the emperor, Meng Zhan will never let go of the Lus, as he has done a great service to the throne. Jiang Pengji's eyes flashed fiercely. What a coincidence. Even if the Mengs didn't come to us, we would have done so sooner or later. The grudges of so many years should finally be settled. Feng Zhen and Yang Si were both dumbfounded. Master, who is Meng Liang? Jiang Pengji said, Meng Liang is Meng Zhan's beloved son. I killed him. What? His lord had killed Meng Zhan's beloved son? When did that happen? Meng Han's face was filled with guilt. My lord, if it wasn't for me, my lord wouldn't have, Jiang Pengji said. What are you saying? I won't regret killing a little bastard. So what if we offend the Mengs? The Mengs want to bet their treasures on Prince Changsha and use him to get rid of the Lus. They'll have to see if the heavens help them. Even if they didn't kill Meng Liang, the Mengs and the Lus would have an unresolvable grudge. Feng Zhen drummed his fingers on his knee. If Prince Changsha really wants to attack the imperial city of Qinzhou, he'll send at most 20,000 soldiers. If we go around Jiamen Pass, we might still make it. As long as the emperor doesn't fall into Prince Changsha's hands, we still have a chance. Yang Si said, if we want to take action, we must inform the alliance leader. My lord, should we? Jiang Pengji was a decisive person. She made up her mind. Prepare the horse. I'm going to find Su Bei. Before becoming the alliance leader, Su Bei's dreams were beautiful, but reality was much harsher than he had imagined. His head was filled with lawsuits. He felt like he was going deaf after listening to the vassals argue for a day. Finally, he could relax for a while. Someone outside reported that Lu Shi wanted to see him. Hearing that it was Lu Shi, Su Bei couldn't reject him. He could only force himself to be alert. Invite my worthy brother in. Jiang Pengji entered the tent. The two exchanged a few words. Then she went straight to the point. Brother Su, you don't look happy. Are you still worried about the alliance? Su Bei let out a long sigh. My worthy brother knows me well. It is indeed because of this. After discussing for a day, we still couldn't decide who should be the vanguard. Jiang Pengji gave him a suggestion. If that's the case, why don't we let each family send out a portion of their troops? That way, they won't have anything to say. Those with more troops will send more people. Those with fewer troops will send less. No matter what, we can't just come to Jiamen Pass in a grandiose manner and not fight, right? Su Bei felt much better. His worthy brother was indeed more considerate. He was much better than those who shirked responsibility all day. Of course, he quickly changed his mind. Jiang Pengji said, Brother Su, I have a request that I hope you can agree to. Su Bei's eyelids twitched subconsciously, but he maintained a warm smile on his face. My worthy brother, please speak your mind. Jiang Pengji briefly repeated her and Feng Zhen's conjecture. She wanted to lead her 10,000 troops to attack Jiamen Pass. Su Bei groaned inwardly. It was indeed difficult to be the leader of the alliance. Previously, Yang Jian had made a fuss about withdrawing from the alliance. Now, Lu Shi wanted to leave the alliance and go on his own. What was going on? He said. This is only your speculation. There is no concrete evidence to prove that Prince Changsha split his troops to attack the imperial city of Qinzhou. If this is true, it will be a great achievement. But if it isn't, aren't you worried that someone will use this as an excuse to attack you? In my opinion, it's better to give this matter further thought. Why don't you wait a little longer and I'll send some scouts to investigate? Jiang Pengji was so righteous that she wished she could carve the word justice on her face. This matter is urgent and cannot be delayed. As long as it can ensure the safety of the imperial court, I'm willing to go through fire and water for it. Su Bei didn't show it on his face, but his heart was already conflicted. If you leave midway, how will I explain this to the other feudal lords? Jiang Pengji pursed her lips and stared straight at Su Bei. Su Bei looked back at her silently. The two of them were in a stalemate when a soldier came to report that Yang Jian was requesting an audience. Su Bei was surprised. Why would Yang Jian suddenly visit at this time? Could it be that he couldn't stand the quarrel during the day and wanted to stir up trouble again? Invite Chief Yang in. Yang Jian had arrived, but he wasn't alone. Behind him was a young scholar in a green bamboo robe, Yan Lin. Jiang Pengji frowned inwardly when she saw this. Chapter 722. As expected, when Yan Lin spoke on behalf of Yang Jian, Jiang Pengji knew what the two were up to. Su Bei was also surprised. He quietly listened to Yan Lin's words and secretly glanced at Jiang Pengji. Did the two groups really not discuss this beforehand? He had every reason to suspect that Yang Jian and Jiang Pengji had teamed up to mess with him. I didn't expect County Chief Yang to have such thoughts. Su Bei adjusted his emotions so that he wouldn't lose his composure. Both of them wanted to leave the organization and wander around. Did they even consider his feelings as the alliance leader? Everything else can be discussed, but this matter is a little difficult. Yan Lin was shocked. He subconsciously looked at Jiang Pengji. Why did the alliance leader say that he had such thoughts? Could it be? Su Bei gave a definite answer. He said, "Before County Chief Yang came, Brother Lanting was talking to me about this." Yan Lin pretended to be calm and smiled. "I didn't expect my lord to have the same thoughts as Magistrate Liu." Jiang Pengji secretly chuckled. Just by looking at Yang Jian's face, she didn't believe that Yang Jian had come up with these ideas. Each of the three parties had their own ideas. For a moment, the tent fell into an eerie silence. The viewers in the streaming room were also burning with anxiety. Unfortunately, they were separated by a dimensional barrier. No matter how anxious they were, it was useless. "Hangxiayu. I'm so angry. I want to grab Su Bei by his collar and smash his head open. What is this person so conflicted about?" The Fairy Queen's crimson. "Sigh, he's the alliance leader. He has to consider many things and weigh the benefits. I have a good impression of Su Bei, but if he keeps obstructing us, I also want to smash his head open for his nonsense." Shengshitai. "Haha, you all want to smash Su Bei's head open. I feel sorry for him. Seriously, as the alliance leader, he only has a good reputation. He doesn't have much power." The streamer and Yang Jian both wanted to leave the group. Su Bei was also very tired. "Mi Jiao, actually, I'm more interested to know if the streamer will work with Yang Jian's troops. After all, they are all going for the same goal. The streamer doesn't have enough troops. If she works with Yang Jian's troops, they can take care of each other. It should be a win-win situation." Just as the salted fish spectators were having their own discussions, Yang Jian was the first to break the stalemate. Yan Lin's expression was calm as he asked Su Bei, "This matter cannot be delayed any longer. I hope that the alliance head can agree to it as soon as possible." A bitter smile appeared on Su Bei's face as he skillfully and easily played Tai Chi. "I know that you want to be loyal to the country, but nothing can be accomplished without rules. The alliance army's rescue of the king concerns the fate of the country, and I cannot allow you to act recklessly. I must first discuss this with the other vassals." Yan Lin was a little angry. Even though he spoke calmly, there was a hint of mockery in his voice. Discuss with the other feudal vassals? They had been debating for an entire day about who should be the vanguard, but there was no conclusion. If we bring this matter up for discussion, by the time the results are out, I think Prince Changsha would have already been wearing the imperial robe and forced His Majesty to abdicate the throne. Jiang Pengji assisted him from the side. She said, "This is an emergency. Brother Su, why don't you make an exception?" Su Bei's eyelids twitched. How could he make an exception for this matter? If he really allowed Yang Jian and Lu Shi's troops to bypass Jiamen Pass, how would he answer to the other feudal vassals when they questioned him? The alliance army was not united to begin with. If something like this were to happen, the alliance army that they had painstakingly gathered together would completely fall apart. There is no room for compromise in this matter. If you are in a hurry, I can summon the feudal vassals right now, but we cannot act on our own. Yan Lin maintained his standard sitting posture. His hands were clenched tightly on his knees. His unwillingness to accept this situation was on the verge of overflowing. Yang Jian's troops had been ostracized and isolated by the feudal vassals the moment they arrived. Now they had to shirk responsibility. It was really frustrating. Jiang Pengji was unhurried. She turned to Su Bei and said, "Brother Su, have you ever thought about the alliance's future?" Su Bei asked in surprise. What do you mean, brother? Zhang Pengji smiled. The Alliance army has been ordered to rescue the king. It is only right and proper for us to follow orders and punish rebels. However, there is a precondition. The person sitting on the throne must be the current emperor. If it's someone else, if it's Prince Changsho, at that time, we'll be traitors. Su Bei's eyelids twitched. If the Alliance army was labeled as rebels, Su Bei, as the leader of the Alliance, would be the first to bear the brunt of the blame. However, the Alliance army had 400,000 troops. Even if Prince Changsho took the throne, he would not dare to act forcefully. At most, he would sow discord among them. If we can save the royal family and nobles in Qinzhou and ensure the emperor's safety, it will all be due to Brother Su's meritorious command. Chief Yang and I will only take credit for running errands. Even if we can't save them, with Brother Su's family background and resources, you can easily escape. Su Bei agreed with this statement in his heart, but on the surface, he acted as if he had been insulted. Brother, in your eyes, am I such a hypocritical and pretentious scoundrel? Zhang Pengji was not surprised by Su Bei's reaction. She said, Of course I know Brother Su is not such a person, but I am worried. Seeing the feudal vassals at the alliance meeting wrangle all day and do nothing proper, I am afraid that they will tarnish Brother Su's good reputation. The people of the world will not investigate how greedy and cowardly these feudal vassals are. They will only think that the alliance leader is indecisive and incompetent. Brother Su, please reconsider. She was not good at other things, but she definitely knew how to grasp the weaknesses of others. Su Bei's weaknesses were reputation, prestige, and meritorious service. The right medicine would be effective quickly. Yan Lin lowered his eyes and listened, as if the things around him had nothing to do with him. However, he was very clear that Su Bei had been persuaded by Zhang Pengji. As expected, Su Bei's expression changed drastically. After struggling for a while, he said, Brother, you only have 10,000 men under your command. If you are not careful and encounter Prince Changsho's elite troops, you will be in danger. This won't do. How can I put you in danger? Zhang Pengji smiled. It's fine. Don't we still have Chief Yang here? The two armies together have 25,000 men, which should be enough to deal with. Su Bei turned to Yang Jian and the others, using his eyes to ask for their opinion. Yan Lin agreed. I will listen to the alliance leader's command. Su Bei slammed his hand on the table, feeling a surge of heroism. He finally relented and agreed to this matter. As for the other feudal vassals, he would think of a way to deal with them. After leaving the tent, Yan Lin snorted coldly. District Magistrate Liu, you are so generous. Zhang Pengji smiled and asked in return, Why do you say so, sir? We have sacrificed our lives and shed our blood at the front lines, but in the end, we give all the benefits to Su Bei. Isn't that generous? Zhang Pengji shrugged her shoulders. If you don't sacrifice your children, you won't be able to catch the wolf. Meritorious service is an empty thing. Only the benefits that are in your hands are real. If they did not use meritorious service to bribe Su Bei, he would never let them go. Yan Lin understood this logic, but he still felt a little disgusted. Since we are fated to work together, why don't we gather the strength of our two families and discuss this together? Chapter 723. Zhang Pengji teased him with a smile. You don't sound very willing. Yan Lin didn't utter a word. He just stared at her for a long time with his jet-black eyes. He had been completely represented by an irrelevant person, and at the same time, he had lost a part of the benefits that he could easily reap. No one would be happy about that. Zhang Pengji was aware of his resentment. A sly smile flashed across her bright eyes. She shamelessly joked with him shamelessly. I know you have resentment in your heart, but when it comes to haggling over it, you should thank me. If it weren't for me, Su Bei wouldn't have let them go so easily. He didn't have to do anything. All he had to do was stall for 3 to 5 days. Then it would be too late. Even though Chief Yang had caused a ruckus earlier, which made the other feudal lords wary of him, it wouldn't last long. Jiamen Pass hadn't been conquered for a long time, so someone had to be the scapegoat. Among all the feudal lords, is there anyone more suitable than your lord? It wasn't easy enough to leave this troublesome place. Yan Lin's face darkened. He turned his head away from the annoying smile on the man's face. It was Zhang Pengji who had set them up, but in her mouth, she made it sound like Yang Jian and Yan Lin were grateful to her. His ability to invert right and wrong was already at the pinnacle of perfection. This person isn't simple. After parting ways, both parties went back to reorganize their troops. Yan Lin, who had been silent for a long time, spoke for the first time. Yang Jian said, "Dragons give birth to dragons, phoenixes give birth to phoenixes, and mice give birth to children who know how to dig holes. How could Lu Shi's son be a good person? I just didn't expect Lu Shi to not only be good at fighting, but also be so eloquent. Now that I think about Zhengze, it's really worrying." In Yang Jian's eyes, Jiang Pengji was a typical other people's child. Yang Tao, his own child, always made him worry. Hearing Yang Jian talk about his son, Yan Lin couldn't help but feel wronged for his best friend. Zhengze has a good temper, and he's passionate and loyal. He's much better than someone with a dark heart. Even if his best friend was a retard, Yan Lin still felt that the naughty kid's best friend was a better person. Yang Jian laughed bitterly. To put it nicely, it's passionate and loyal. To put it bluntly, it's impulsive and brainless. Fortunately, this kid was fortunate in his previous life to have a good friend like you. With you looking after him for me, I won't have to worry about him being bullied after 100 years. Yang Jian had many children, but he only had one son, and he was the son of his first wife. He loved him even more. Unfortunately, this child had been a one-track mind ever since he was young. He had stirred up a lot of trouble, causing Yang Jian to worry so much that his beard was no longer as smooth as it used to be. Yang Jian heaved a sigh of relief when he met Yan Lin. Yan Lin smiled. The Lord is in his prime. He won't look old in another 30 or 50 years. Yang Jian stroked his beautiful beard. The two of them returned to the camp surrounded by his personal guards. He ordered the troops and horses to be reorganized and things to be packed. There was still some time before they set up camp. Yan Lin went to Jiang Pengji's camp to discuss some matters. Lu Shi and Lu Shi were father and son. Their campsites were very close to each other. When Yan Lin arrived, Lu Shi's campsite was busy tidying up. Lu Shi's campsite was as quiet as ever. He frowned and suppressed his doubts. My father doesn't like fighting and killing. He had no choice but to come to this alliance meeting. Jiang Pengji could tell what he was thinking. She explained with a smile, using a surprise attack to stop Prince Chongshou's elite troops was too exciting for him, so I didn't want to disturb him. If you don't ask for help from the Lu governor, you only have 10,000 men. Is that enough? Yan Lin asked. Jiang Pengji said, It's enough. Both our families have 25,000 men. If my father's troops were added to the mix, we would be too big of a target. They were planning to launch a surprise attack, and the key was the word, surprise. If they were discovered by the enemy because they were too big of a target, the final result would be greatly reduced. They might even lose their lives. Yan Lin's expression softened a little. That makes sense. Jiamen Pass was located in the middle of a mountain range. The terrain was steep and undulating. It would be very difficult to go around it and enter Qinzhou. However, just because it was difficult didn't mean it was impossible. If we want to go around Jiamen Pass, there are two ways. As the representative of Yang Jian's army, Yan Lin wasn't a pushover. Since he had the guts to come up with this plan, he was naturally well prepared. Even though it was an away battle, he was still full of confidence. The first way is through the water, but the current is fast and dangerous. We have to go against the current. If we aren't good swimmers, we won't be able to cross it. Yang Jian's men were from Zhangzhou's Dongmen County. There were many waters there, and the water was fierce. Every one of them was a natural swimmer. The water route around Jiamen Pass was only moderately difficult for them. However, most of Jiang Pengji's soldiers didn't know how to swim, which was a bit embarrassing. Feng Zhan smiled and pointed at a certain mountain range on the map. The other way should be here, right? Yan Lin said. Yes. However, the mountain path is rugged and dangerous. Wild beasts and poisonous insects roam the land. Normal people don't dare to enter because it's easy to get lost. In other words, if Jiang Pengji wanted to stop Prince Chongshou, she had to choose between these two ways. If she felt that it was too dangerous and didn't want to take the risk, she could choose to take the longer route. However, it would take a lot of time, and she might even run into Prince Chongshou's scouts. The two ways Yan Lin chose were both the shortest. If they walked normally, they would be able to get around Jiamen Pass in one night. Zhang Pengji smiled and made the decision. Deal. Let's set a time and place. We'll wait for you there. As soon as she said this, Yan Lin's expression turned into one of shock. The live stream room was flooded with comments of 666 for her domineering words. Liuli Huayu, my streamer is still as domineering as ever. Not climbing koala. Eh? What did the streamer do this time? Why are you guys giving her so many comments? Cha Yuanfei. Hey, can't you tell? I remember the streamer said that Yang Jian's men were all good swimmers, so they would definitely choose the water route. They were so confident. The streamer's men can't swim, so they could only choose the mountain path. The mountain path was rugged and more exhausting. Looking at the map, the distance was longer than the water route. But the streamer said they would wait for Yang Jian's men. Isn't that domineering? Sai Pu. Well, I can say that it's domineering, but it's even more annoying. Didn't you see that Yan Lin's eyes were about to spit fire? No one would be able to maintain 100% composure when encountering such a chunibu like the host. Not to mention Zhang Pengji's enemies. Even the people around her couldn't keep their master's mocking face. Deal. Since the district magistrate is so confident, let's meet up here. Yan Lin pointed at a spot on the map and his smile returned. Chapter 724. The pitch-black sky was like thick, black ink. Only a little moonlight shone on the ground. Zhang Pengji's troops were ready to depart. They quietly left the camp under the cover of the night. Yang Jian's situation was similar. The other feudal vassals were still living in a drunken stupor, continuing their tradition of enjoyment. There was no sign of the incessant quarrels they had during the day. Before Zhang Pengji left, she informed Lu Shi. He sent people to help cover up the two camps so that no one would find out that the two camps were empty. The weather is so cold, and it's so dark that you can't even see your fingers in front of you. Yang Jian and his men are crossing the river against the current. Feng Zhan was wrapped in thick clothes and had a brand new hot water bottle in his arms. Even so, he still felt cold. He couldn't imagine how Yang Jian's troops could cross the river against the current. No matter how good they were at swimming, it would be difficult to protect their lives against the rapid and cold water. Thinking about stripping off their clothes and jumping into the water, going against the current, Feng Zhan's small body couldn't help but shiver. His lips turned even whiter. Zhang Pengji smiled. She said, "Who told you that they have to jump into the water?" Ha! Feng Zhan was surprised. But didn't Yang Jian and his men choose the waterway? If they cross the river by boat, they don't have enough boats. They don't have many soldiers, but they still have 15,000 men. How can they cross the river smoothly? Is it possible that Yang Jian has a trick up his sleeve? Zhang Pengji smiled but didn't say anything. She said, "Anyway, they can cross the river smoothly. We have to work harder here." Chenzhou was considered to be in the south. No matter how steep the mountains were, they had a limit. However, the mountains were surrounded by mountains. Without a guide with a good sense of direction, it was easy to get lost. Fortunately, it's still the cold season. If it were spring or summer, the miasma in the mountains, wild beasts, snakes, insects, and rats would be enough to make our army suffer. To make it easier for the troops to march and lighten their load, Meng Hun took off half of his armor. He only covered his vital parts. It's cold now, so it's easier. If it were daytime, it would be even better. At least we wouldn't be unable to see the road. Marching at night was prone to trouble. Because of the lack of nutrition, many soldiers had night blindness and their vision was impaired. Even though Zhang Pengji had greatly improved the food in the military camp and distributed torches in groups of 50, marching was still very difficult. Zhang Pengji adjusted her strategy. She let the soldiers who were strong and had good eyesight and hearing to clear a path in front. The soldiers who had weaker eyesight and physical strength were in the middle and back. If the soldiers clearing the path got tired, another team would take their place to ensure that they advanced at a constant speed. If it were during the day, we wouldn't be able to hide our movements from the other vassal forces. Li Yun and Yan Yan were at the front of the troops. The silver spear that was supposed to be used to reap the lives of the enemies had now become a walking stick for him to test the road ahead. Surprisingly, he did not feel any heartache. As long as we hide it from Prince Chongshou's eyes and ears, I'm afraid they won't be able to guess that we actually dared to take an unorthodox path and bypass Jiamen Pass. The road was too rugged. Yang Si and Feng Zhan had already dismounted from their horses and were walking. Before long, they were panting and sweating profusely. Li Yun turned to Yang Si and said, "Are you tired, teacher? How about I carry you on my back?" Yang Si was still reserved. After all, Li Yun was the general leading the charge. He had to conserve his strength. The road was so rugged that he was already exhausted after walking for a while. If Li Yun carried him on his back, wouldn't he die of exhaustion? Therefore he chose to refuse. However, someone else was much more thick-skinned than him. Feng Zhen said, "Hanmei, you're being biased. I'm tired too. Why don't you carry me on your back?" Li Yun blinked innocently, then repeated obediently, "Are you tired, teacher? How about I carry you on my back?" Feng Zhen immediately nodded vigorously. "Yes, yes, yes." Jiang Pengji hesitated for a while and said, "Xueqi is making a fuss." Feng Zhen was surprised. What did she mean? Yang Si snorted and mocked, "I said you're shameless." Looking at the two strategists who were about to start a fight, Li Yun could only watch anxiously from the side. "Just carry him on your back. Do you want to give them time to quarrel?" Jiang Pengji walked past Li Yun and raised her hand to pat his shoulder. "Sigh, the combined age of the two of them is almost 60. Don't you find it embarrassing that you're still so noisy?" Li Yun's strength was his sincerity. Jiang Pengji asked him to carry Li Yun on his back, and he really did. Yang Si was speechless. Once again, this group of people was poisonous. Although it was late at night, the cultivators in the streaming room were still full of energy. They watched the farce with a smile. "Hua zhua zhua. Haha, Li Yun and Feng Zhen, I'm in love with this sweet CP. Fei Xianglong, you fickle fairies. Just a while ago, you were in love with Yang Si and Feng Zhen. You've changed your mind so quickly. Cheshan Douyan. That won't do. Streamer, you'd better hurry up and introduce all kinds of girls. You have a bunch of men under you. Aren't you afraid that they'll fall in love with each other? For example, you can't let a rich son-in-law like brother Li Yun fall in love." Jiang Pengji looked at the screen full of bullet screens and was speechless. She planned to poison the viewers in the streaming room. "Han Mei. What's the matter, my lord?" Jiang Pengji asked. "How are you and Wan Er?" "What?" Whether it was the strategists or the 150,000 spectators, they all pricked up their ears. There was gossip. Li Yun's eyes darted around, and his cheeks flushed red. "Lady Wan is doing well. Why did my lord suddenly mention this?" As soon as he said that, the bullet screens in the streaming room turned into jeering, "Oh. Lady Wan? Isn't that the leader of the women's department in the government office? Han Mei had taught her martial arts. Could it be that they hooked up at that time? There aren't many talented unmarried ladies in Wanzhou. While she's unclaimed, it's better to pluck her as soon as possible, lest someone covets her." Li Yun smiled bitterly. "Sir, we're not even close yet." Feng Zhen lay on Li Yun's back and raised his hand to pat his head. "If there's no close yet, why don't you take a pen and write it down?" Yang Si smiled and shook his head. "That's rare. Maybe in a few months, Wanzhou will be able to hold a proper wedding." The ratio of married and unmarried people under Jiang Pengji was basically the same. Yang Si was considered old and unmarried, but he had very high standards. He would rather sleep with women than find a mistress for his backyard. Ever since Feng Zhan beat his wife to death, he became a widower in peace. He was also in the red light district, having fun day and night. Of course, nowadays he was either busy with government affairs or war. He didn't even have time to look for the fifth young lady, let alone a young lady. Jiang Pengji jeered, "When the time comes, I'll give you a few more months of salary in advance. Han Mei, the gift money you receive will be the same as their salary." How could Li Yun be a match for the teasing of a few trusted people? In a short while, he was so embarrassed that he didn't know how to walk. Listening to their teasing, Li Yun wanted to dig a hole in the ground. Chapter 725. The mountain road was rugged and difficult to navigate. It was easy to get lost. However, under Jiang Pengji's command, these problems were not a problem at all. The difficulties they encountered were much easier than expected. On the other side, Yang Jian's troops had also come prepared. They had experienced much more dangerous rapids. This was not a big challenge for a group of swimmers. Xiaoyang, can you still hold on? Yang Tao was breathing heavily. His face was no longer immature, but it was filled with the vigor and determination of a young man. Compared to Yang Tao's roughness and casualness, Yan Lin maintained his calm and reserved demeanor. I'm fine. Zhangzi, go ahead and take care of the Lord. His arrow wound has not healed yet, so he needs to be careful. Yan Lin did not approve of Yang Jian's participation in the surprise attack, but Yang Jian was worried about his retarded son and did not dare let him lead the troops alone. Yang Tao nodded. Xiaoyang, you be careful too. Although the river was flowing fast, it was winter. The current was lower than when the tide was high, so the slope on both sides was exposed. The slope was gentle, so it could be used to reduce the difficulty. This was also one of the trump cards that allowed Yan Lin to reach the destination before Jiang Pengji did. One took the water route, and the other took the mountain route. Both hurried on without a word. The Alliance's camp in front of Jiamen Pass was still bustling with noise until a ray of white light dispelled the darkness in the sky. The sky turned from dark to gray, then from gray to light. Each of the feudal lords had their own agenda. With Lu Shi's help, no one realized that the Alliance had lost 25,000 men. However, they could hide it for a while, but they could not hide it forever. 2 camps with a total of 25,000 men were missing. Even the slowest person would notice something was wrong. The funny thing was, when they found out, it was already dusk the next day. Upon receiving this news, all the clans were shocked. And Cui had secretly joined the Hu County chief, Wu Ma Shang, to get some benefits. When Cui heard the news, he saw Wu Ma Shang's sinister smile. This Lu Shi is just a coward who ran away from battle. Lu Zhongqing must be crying his eyes out to have such a son. Wu Ma Shang snorted. Although he had no conflict with Jiang Pengji, he still hated the Lu father and son. Chongzhou, Wanzhou, and Hu County were all in the hands of the Lu father and son. As a member of the royal family, how could he stand it? Did the world belong to the Wu Ma family or the Lu family? And Cui said in a low voice, Lu Shi is not that kind of cowardly person. He would never run away in the face of battle. There must be some secret that we don't know about since he left in the middle of the night. Alliance head Su Bei should know about it. The prefectural governor can go and ask about it. Wu Ma Shang snorted disdainfully. Although he said that he did not care about others, he was still very afraid of them. Okay, let's go. On the other side, Huang Song also received the news at the same time. He didn't have much of a relationship with Yang Jian, so it wasn't easy for him to make a judgment. However, he had a certain understanding of Jiang Pengji and knew her temperament. Even if there were rumors outside that the two of them had fled at the last moment, Huang Song did not think so. There must be an inside story for the two forces to leave overnight. Feng Ju and Cheng Jing looked at each other. They knew what was going on. Feng Ju and Cheng Jing looked at each other. As if they had a tacit understanding of each other, they realized the crux of the matter and secretly realized that something was wrong. By the time Huang Song and the others arrived, the tent was already filled with people who had heard the news. They were not there to ask about the whereabouts of Yang Jian and Jiang Pengji's troops. They just wanted to watch Su Bei's show. They weren't there to ask about the whereabouts of Yang Jian and Jiang Pengji's troops. They were just there to watch Su Bei's show. Su Fei laughed. Big brother, you are not doing your job as the alliance leader. Someone came and went as he pleased. Su Bei glanced at him. There was no sign of panic or anger on his face. Instead, he was calm and composed. Who told you this? Su Bei glanced at him. There was no trace of panic or anger on his face. Instead, he was calm and composed. Who told you this news? As for what they were doing, I cannot tell you for now to prevent secrets from being leaked. Su Fei snorted coldly. He did not believe this excuse at all. He thought Su Bei was guilty. Su Bei kept a straight face, his eyes filled with disdain. Everyone, your first task is to break through Jiamen Pass. Nothing else is important. Su Bei's face was stern, and his eyes were filled with disdain. Everyone, your primary mission is to break through the Jiamen Pass. Everything else is unimportant. Lanting and Commandant Yang only had 25,000 soldiers, less than 10% of the Allied forces. Is it impossible to conquer Jiamen Pass without them? Alliance Master, you misunderstand. Su Fei's tone was sarcastic, and his eyes were full of provocation. Without them, the Alliance will naturally be able to conquer Jiamen Pass. However, as a member of the Alliance, he acted on his own. Did he take the Alliance leader seriously? With their actions, how could the Alliance's morale be united? Similarly, as the leader of the Alliance, you are also responsible for neglecting your duties. The tent was filled with the smell of gunpowder. Su Bei had said that Jiang Pengji and the others were being dispatched in secret, and that the other details could not be made public. Su Fei insisted that this was Su Bei's excuse. Enough! Suddenly, a voice that was like ice jade was transmitted from outside the tent into the tent. Lu Shi, dressed in a scholarly robe and with a heavy cloak draped over his shoulders, strode in. His eyes were cold, and his stern expression made it impossible for anyone to make a sound. If everyone is curious, then wait for half a month. There will naturally be news of victory. Su Fei was a little afraid of Lu Shi's authority, but he was not afraid of death. Of course, as a father, I have to take care of the aftermath for my son. What if there is no news of victory in half a month? If there was no news of victory in half a month, it meant that Lu Shi's ambush had failed. He did not achieve the desired result, and he might even be killed by Prince Chongshou's army. His life would be in danger. Su Bei secretly signaled for Su Fei to shut up, but the kid continued to provoke him. If there is no news of victory, I will break through Jiamen Pass. Lu Shi said calmly. The son was arrogant, but the father was no different. Everyone was a little confused at first, but when they realized what was going on, they all glared at him. Lu Zhongqing, do you mean that we will not be able to break through Jiamen Pass in half a month? Lu Shi's lips curled into a mocking smile. It's good that you know your limits. You? Su Fei slammed his palm on the table. He was so angry that his hands were shaking. Lu Shi didn't even pay attention to him. He flicked his sleeves and left. Until the end, Su Bei still did not reveal the whereabouts of Lu Shi and Yang Jian's troops. Who knew if there were spies from Prince Chongshou among the Alliance's troops? In short, Su Bei would not easily reveal anything that was related to the military secrets. However, even if he didn't say anything, there would still be people who would be able to figure out the truth. What a bold move. Cheng Jing lowered his eyes. But this person relies too much on crafty tactics. Feng Ju was mentally prepared for this. After all, he and Jiang Pengji were old friends. Chapter 726. Cheng Jing frowned slightly. His jade-like eyes glinted. Since Governor Lu is willing to back Lu Shi up, he must have safely bypassed Jiamen Pass by now. Feng Ju smiled. We think alike. They were right. After a night of running and climbing, Jiang Pengji finally led the army past Jiamen Pass and into Qinzhou. The morning light was bright and blinding. Jiang Pengji rubbed her eyelids, which she hadn't slept all night, to get rid of the soreness in her eyes. Let's settle the soldiers down and rest for a while. Eat some rations to replenish our energy and spirit. Feng Zhen rubbed his shoulders. He had fallen asleep on Li Yun's back in the middle of the night, but he hadn't slept well. His eyes had turned green. My lord, why don't you compete with Yang Jian to see who will arrive first? Jiang Pengji glared at Feng Zhen impatiently. In the end, is this kind of personal conflict more important, or is the soldiers more important? I was just saying that to piss them off. After a night of running, even with Jiang Pengji's coordination to ensure that they were on the right path and didn't take any detours, the soldiers were still exhausted. Jiang Pengji didn't want them to continue with this kind of exhaustion. She would rather spend more time resting. Thank you for your consideration, my lord. Feng Zhen smiled and cupped his hands. He had a sly smile on his face. Jiang Pengji didn't know what to say. The army rested and reorganized. Although they couldn't light a fire to cook, they had already prepared some dry rations before they left. They made a lot of rice balls that could be used as dry rations. The rice balls were also wrapped with a lot of finely sliced pickled vegetables. Together with the water in the water bag, it could barely be considered as a breakfast. The soldiers were fed like this, so Jiang Pengji didn't treat them any differently. It's still warm. I thought I would eat rice balls that were as cold as ice. The rice balls prepared by Li Yun were wrapped in several layers of cloth and stuffed into the inner layer of his armor. They were still warm when taken out. Eating the rice balls directly was dry and tasteless, So Jiang Pengji had someone add shredded pickled vegetables inside. It tasted a little salty in the mouth. It was good enough that the army could have such conditions in battle. No one complained, but the viewers in the streaming room felt sorry for them. Li Wushuang. My baby Yang Si is the most picky eater. Now that the conditions are tough, even the rice balls are so delicious. Fengxing Xueqi. Same. Looking at the live broadcast, I suddenly feel that the lobster feast in front of me is tasteless. Shenyuan Mingjing. Haha, the person above me is poisonous. Did he really feel sorry for her, or did he deliberately poison her? Jiang Pengji deliberately did not look at the bullet screen in the streaming room. According to her understanding of the audience, they must be posting all kinds of delicacies. She wouldn't go looking for trouble. Everyone ate until they were 70 to 80% full, and then rested for 4 hours. The sun had already risen high above their heads. It's almost time. Let's go and meet up, Jiang Pengji said. The rendezvous point was only an hour's walk away. Jiang Pengji was not in a hurry. She tried her best to take care of the soldiers. When they arrived, Yang Jian's troops were already resting at their destination. Yan Lin was surprised to see them. According to his conjecture, even if they didn't get lost, they would have to take some detours. They wouldn't be able to make it in time. In the end, they arrived at their destination. Yan Lin's gaze fell on the soldiers' faces. Although they were tired, they didn't look like they hadn't rested for more than a dozen hours. In other words, they must have rested halfway through the journey. If they hadn't rested, they might have arrived earlier than they did. Thinking about this, Yan Lin didn't dare to underestimate them anymore. He paid more attention to Jiang Pengji. Since the two families were working together, they had to share some information. In Chenzhou, other than the power of the court, there was also the power of Prince Changshou. If the two families wanted to stop Prince Changshou's power, not only would they have to be fast, but they would also have to make sure that their information was not leaked. Otherwise, if the enemy was prepared, it would be difficult for them to achieve the desired result. How could they ensure that their tracks were not leaked? Of course, they had to plan the best route to avoid possible spies, and at the same time, they had to make sure that they didn't waste any time. The conditions were simple, so the two families found a random place and gathered together to discuss. Yang Jian and his son had never had a say in such things. They didn't mind letting Yan Lin have full control of the situation. On Jiang Pengji's side, the generals had their own tasks. They trusted the military counselor and their lord's experience, so they didn't interrupt. At that moment, Yan Lin realized that Lu Shi was very different from the other lords. Usually, the lords would wait for the strategists to discuss before making a decision. Jiang Pengji, on the other hand, was directly involved in the discussion. She wasn't pretending to understand. Seeing this, Yang Jian sighed even harder. When comparing goods, you have to throw them away. When comparing people, you have to die. If his son didn't have to worry half as much as Lu Shi, he would be very happy. If it weren't for Yan Lin, Yang Jian would often have the urge to shove the kid back into the furnace and remake him. They had already come up with a plan, but the alliance only realized that the two forces had disappeared. Lu Shi had mocked the alliance for not being able to take Jiamen Pass. They didn't believe him, so they insisted on taking it down for Lu Shi to see. Then, they were slapped in the face by the defending generals of Jiamen Pass. The first battle lasted more than 2 hours, and they lost more than 2,000 corpses. They had no choice but to retreat. Seeing this, everyone's faces turned as black as the bottom of a pot. Su Bei sat in the seat of honor, listening to the dukes passing the buck. He felt like his brain was about to explode. After dealing with these people with great difficulty, Su Bei went to Lu Shi that very night. He wanted to secretly ask for advice on how to break through the pass. Lu Shi's answer left Su Bei speechless. He said, "I had no choice. You asked me to govern a state and a county. I don't think I'm weaker than anyone else, but it's difficult to command a battle." Su Bei was so shocked that he couldn't close his mouth. If Lu Shi didn't have a brilliant plan to break through the pass, then why did he boast during the day? He didn't ask, but his face clearly said, "Are you kidding me?" Lu Shi was speechless. Lu Shi said sternly, "If I didn't say that, those people would have continued to attack the alliance leader and Lanting. How could I bear to watch that?" In short, he had to say something. Acting cool for a while, but dealing with the aftermath was the crematorium. Xueqi was speechless. If there's no news of victory in half a month, how will you deal with it, Governor Liu? What he said was like spilled water. If he wasn't careful, he would be slapped in the face. If he was slapped in the face, how would he keep his dignity as a governor? Liu Shi secretly rolled his eyes and said, "In half a month, the Alliance's 400,000 soldiers should be able to break through Jiamen Pass. I said that they're useless. Are they really willing to give up? Even if we take 10,000 steps back and say that we can't break through Jiamen Pass, I still have faith in my Lanting. There will definitely be news of victory in half a month. If we fail on both of these points, we'll think of another way. I'm not in a hurry." Xueqi was speechless. You're not in a hurry, but he is. Chapter 727. 11 days passed in the blink of an eye. The Alliance finally broke through Jiamen Pass. That night, they celebrated with dancing and singing. Seeing this, Huang Song and a few of his trusted advisors sighed. Those idiots. It took them 11 days to break through Jiamen Pass. I don't know what to celebrate. Huang Song was so angry that he pounded the table. The music from outside drifted in and drilled into his ears, causing him to be upset. Feng Ju and the others looked at each other and smiled bitterly. What was the difference between the Alliance and the Mud? Tomorrow, the army will leave for Jiamen Pass. I just hope we can make it in time. Feng Ju sighed. Cheng Jing lowered his eyes and said coldly, "How can we make it in time? I'm afraid the imperial city of Qinzhou is already in danger. Damn it, these short-sighted people are still so smug. Who would dare to admit that they're greedy? Now we can only pin our hopes on Liu Shi and Yang Jian and hope they can be fast enough. Even if we can't save the imperial city, we have to save His Majesty." Because the 5 kingdoms had only been established for a short period of time, coupled with the education of the aristocratic families, the scholars were not very loyal to the country. Cheng Jing and Feng Ju were typical examples. To them, the imperial family would be destroyed sooner or later, but not now. The Emperor of Dongqing was still around, and he could still control some forces. If the emperor was gone, the whole of Dongqing would be ruled by feudal lords. As for Huang Song, he needed to lay low and develop further. He couldn't live without the emperor. Feng Ju sneered and said with obvious sarcasm, "I hope so. God bless Dongqing." But God wasn't on Dongqing's side. The fate of the country was almost exhausted. No matter how hard they tried, they could only struggle on. On the second day after the Alliance broke through Jiamen Pass, they passed through the pass in high spirits. The imperial city of Qinzhou was in danger. Ever since they moved the capital to Qinzhou, the emperor had planned to build the imperial city into another Shangjing. However, the national treasury was empty, and Prince Changshu had taken the opportunity to interfere. Most of the silver had to be invested in the army. Because there wasn't enough money for construction, the emperor and his concubines had to live in the temporary palace in Qinzhou. Although it was a temporary imperial residence, it was no less luxurious than the imperial palace in Shangjing. The emperor and his concubines could still live a befuddled and luxurious life. The emperor did not need to care about the war outside. He only cared about his own enjoyment. He embraced beauties, drank wine, and enjoyed himself. A luxurious life required the support of money, but how could he raise enough money for his extravagant spending? The emperor simply moved the secret practice of selling official positions and titles to the surface. Every official title was clearly marked at a price. The emperor's table manners were ugly and shameful to the aristocrats. The emperor had 3,000 beauties by his side, but the one he doted on the most was the former imperial noble consort, the current Empress Huijun. When talking about the empress, many officials were filled with love and hate, gnashing their teeth in anger. Why was it a love-hate relationship? Because, as long as she was present, the emperor's violent nature would be greatly restrained, and he would not easily draw his sword to kill. Many officials were about to be executed by the emperor. It was all thanks to Empress Huijun's plea that their entire families were spared from the death penalty. Logically speaking, the officials had more or less received the empress' kindness, so why did they still hate her? When Empress Huijun was still the imperial noble consort, she plotted to murder the previous empress and seduce the crown prince, causing the relationship between the emperor and the crown prince to fall apart. The father and son turned against each other, and the crown prince's entire family was stripped of their status, demoted to commoners, and died miserably. As for the crown prince himself, he was beheaded by the furious emperor, and he died with his eyes wide open. Not only was the crown prince murdered by Hui Jun, but the second prince, the third prince, and the fourth prince Wu Ma Jun were also murdered. The second prince was found to have used witchcraft to murder the emperor and empress Hui Jun. His house was confiscated, and he was killed. His mother's family was not spared. The third prince's presence was very weak, but his status was the most honorable. His mother was from a side branch of the Feng family, but she was found to have seduced his concubine's mother, caused chaos in the palace, and had sex with the emperor's new favorite beauty in public. As a result, she was stripped of her status and demoted to a commoner. As for the fourth prince Wu Ma Jun, he did not end up well either. One day, he ran out of his mansion in a drunken fit and passed out on the side of the road. His legs were crushed by a few passing carriages, and he was now a cripple. Many imperial censors investigated and pointed the finger at Empress Hui Jun, but the emperor was deeply infatuated with her and did not listen to them at all. The court was in chaos, and everyone was panicking. The Meng family of Cangzhou changed sides overnight. Prince Changshou, who was originally in a state of decline, made a comeback and defeated the Qinzhou army. The emperor drank until he was drunk, and Hui Jun spent all day with him. All the ministers who came to see him ate and went into seclusion. Hui Jun was now seductive to the bone. She seemed angry and resentful, and her eyes were full of charm. She said to the emperor, "Your Majesty, they are shouting outside again. Day after day. It's so annoying. If Jun doesn't like it, find a small eunuch and kick them out." The emperor touched Hui Jun's delicate, boneless hand with intoxicated eyes. At the mention of those noisy imperial censors, he felt a wave of irritation. Bad news came from the front line every day. It was fine if those ministers could not share his burdens, but they liked to meddle in the affairs of his backyard. So, he still liked to stay at Hui Jun's place. As long as he enjoyed her body, listened to her gentle voice, and enjoyed that moment of pleasure, he would be willing to die. How could he care about those officials outside who were babbling nonsense? Hui Jun smiled. It was not an exaggeration to say that her smile could topple a city. "Your Majesty, you'd better go out and take a look. If you continue to stay here, I'm afraid the ministers will criticize me again." The more magnanimous she was, the more the emperor hated the ministers. The emperor's eyes were fierce. I won't go. Let them kneel outside until they die. Both of them are useless. They can't share my burdens, and they make things difficult for me everywhere. If it wasn't for Jun's pleas, they would have been beheaded long ago. Would they still be making noise outside? Hui Jun said considerately, "As the person who sleeps beside your Majesty, how can I not understand the troubles in your Majesty's heart? It's just that all the ministers are the pillars of the country. If something happens to them kneeling outside the palace, it will be one more crime to frame me." Alas! The emperor felt sorry for her and wrapped his hands around her soft hands. His heart was full of relief. They misunderstood Jun so much, but Jun still pleads for them everywhere. Unfortunately, the people outside are a group of ungrateful ingrates. How can they deserve Jun's protection? The emperor frowned in his heart. He was increasingly disgusted with those ignorant ministers. Jun is still the best. Chapter 728. The emperor raised his hand to stop her. "I believe you. Ignore the others. I've raised those unfilial sons for nothing. They're all animals who want to kill me. Those vermin who tried to kill their father and usurp the throne deserve to die." The ministers thought that Hui Jun had instigated the fall of the princes and even the death of the crown prince. But in reality, Hui Jun did get involved, but she was just taking advantage of the situation. At most, she was a catalyst and an accomplice. She wasn't the real mastermind. Who was the real mastermind? It was the emperor in front of them. Jun's body is comparable to the elixirs of immortals. "It makes my body lighter and younger," the emperor said obsessively. "We're still so young. We can have 8 or 10 children in the future and teach them well. They'll definitely be better than those bastards." Why did the emperor want to kill his sons? First, the princes were young and strong. They coveted the throne, but the emperor was gradually weakening. He was just not satisfied. Second, under Hui Jun's deliberate provocation and schemes, the princes already had the intention to rebel. The emperor didn't have to be lenient to kill them. For an emperor, which was more important, the throne and his own life? Needless to say, the throne and his life were more important. With the throne and his life, his body was getting younger and younger. As long as he had a woman, anyone could give him countless sons. Rather than saying that Huijun had plotted against the princes, it was more accurate to say that the emperor had made Huijun the scapegoat and used her to kill his sons. Your Majesty. Huijun nodded shyly, seeming to be angry but not angry. When the emperor saw this, he laughed from the bottom of his heart and easily picked up the beauty. The two of them rolled into a ball on the dragon couch. The interweaving breathing created an atmosphere that made one's face and ears red. Their clothes were in tatters, and fragrant sweat continuously. Another day passed. An elite army of more than 20,000 soldiers descended from the sky and surrounded the imperial city of Chenzhou, which had been emptied of soldiers. War raged inside and outside the city. The common people ran in fear. Everyone was at a loss. The ministers and nobles packed up their belongings and prepared to escape with their wives and children. Inside the palace, the eunuchs walked hurriedly with panicked expressions. Some people took advantage of the chaos to steal and escape the imperial city. Inside the imperial harem, the concubines and beauties were panicking. One by one, they scrambled to steal gold, silver, jewelry, and clothes. Everyone was panicking, except for two people. The emperor breathed heavily and raged at the officials and the messenger. He was so angry that his chest hurt and his face was slightly green. The whole of Dongqing was his territory, but the rebels and traitors outside wanted to invade. They wanted the life of the emperor. The other person was the current Empress Huijun. She sat quietly on an exquisite couch, and the palace maids serving her were quickly packing up. Empress, is there anything else you want to bring? The personal palace maid asked her. Huijun was playing with a dagger embedded with all sorts of resplendent gems. When she pulled it out, the blade was suffused with a cold white light. She looked into the distance and said with a smile, I don't need any jewelry. Just do as you see fit. The palace maids looked at the empress every day and felt that she was a celestial being. Now that they looked at her again, they felt that the empress' smile was less bewitching and more pure and innocent. It was even more shocking. The palace maids returned to their senses and continued to tidy up the treasures in the empress palace. Huijun looked down at the dagger and snapped it shut. Then, she hid the dagger in her sleeve and tied it to her arm. Dog Emperor. If it wasn't for this dog emperor, she would have a gentle and kind father and a beautiful and virtuous mother. She would have been their treasure. However, because of this dog emperor, her father was killed and her mother was sent to the palace to serve a strange man while she was pregnant. After the robbery, why did he throw her mother and her into a poor house in Shangjing and make them lowly prostitutes? He broke up her family and destroyed her entire life. She wanted to cut off this man's descendants and destroy her family. Huijun snorted coldly and made up her mind. The emperor wanted to escape, but he didn't forget about Huijun. When Huijun was taken away by the palanquin, her ears were filled with the cries and sobs of the concubines and beauties because they had been heartlessly abandoned by the emperor. What would happen to the concubines of the emperor once they were captured by the rebel army? Huijun didn't have the heart to think about it. She wanted to pity these women, but in the end, she tragically realized that she no longer had that kind of mercy. June, why do you look so terrible? The emperor asked as he held her hand. Huijun said expressionlessly, I saw those sisters on the way, but they... The emperor interrupted Huijun. Those women are short-sighted and of lowly birth. Why are you sad for them, June? Huijun's heart turned cold. Those women were all women that the emperor had recruited into the palace through various means, but now he had abandoned them like a pair of worn-out shoes. She said, I was just feeling sentimental for a moment. Things just grieve for their own kind. The emperor hugged her and gently comforted her. June, don't worry. I will never let you down. I will definitely protect your safety. Huijun nestled in his arms and revealed a blissful smile. However, her eyes were still cold, without a hint of a smile. The emperor and the ministers sneaked out of the city under the protection of the imperial guards. After all, Prince Chongshou's elite army only had about 20,000 men. It was impossible for them to surround the entire imperial city. Unfortunately, their whereabouts were still exposed after 2 days, and the enemy caught up again. The army that caught up with the emperor was the vanguard of the cavalry. More than 10,000 imperial guards were solemnly waiting in formation against the enemy. Outside, there were the sounds of killing and screams. The emperor's face was pale. He could only obtain some peace by holding Xueqi's hand tightly. "Your Majesty, you are the true son of heaven. You will definitely be safe." The emperor patted Xueqi's hand, and his pale face softened slightly. At first, the imperial guards were still able to resist the attack of the cavalry vanguard. However, as the number of enemy reinforcements increased, the imperial guards gradually lost their strength. The defensive line was broken, and there were heavy casualties. Not only were there the screams of the soldiers outside, but there were also the screams of the ministers' families. The emperor's face gradually turned from pale to green, until a head flew into the dragon carriage. "Your Majesty, the reinforcements of the rebel army are coming. We can't hold them off anymore." The emperor could not sit still anymore. He asked the eunuch to prepare ordinary clothes for him, and planned to let the men of sacrifice protect him to break out of the encirclement. However, if that was the case, Empress Xueqi would not be able to take him away. His eyes turned cold, as if recalling something from the past. He asked someone to prepare white silk wine for Xueqi. After hearing this, Xueqi's face turned pale. She smiled sadly. "I am willing to wait for you on the bridge of helplessness. I'm sorry, I still let you down. You are the empress. You cannot be humiliated by the rebel army. Do you understand?" "I understand." There were faint tears in Xueqi's eyes as she leaned affectionately in the emperor's arms. "Your Majesty, before I die, I have no other wish. I only hope that your Majesty can hear the story of my past. If I can live completely in your heart, I can die without regrets." The emperor was anxious, but under Xueqi's reassurance, he became more patient. "Speak." Xueqi stroked the side of his face affectionately with her left hand, and the dagger in her right sleeve slipped into her palm. Puff. Chapter 729. "You vile, vile woman." The emperor had just been regretting losing Xueqi, but in the next second, this woman thrust a dagger into his heart. He used all his strength to try and break free. His eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets, and he soon stopped breathing. Xueqi sneered. Her blood-stained face broke into a carefree smile that had never been seen before. Her voice trembled as she went mad. "Dog Emperor, do you know how much I hate you?" As she spoke, she thrust the dagger in her right hand into his heart. She twisted the hilt and crushed his heart. Blood flowed from the wound and dyed her hand bright red. Her slender fingers were the color of red agate. "My hatred for you runs deep into my bones. You ruined my entire family and my life. Dog Emperor, you deserve this. You can die with everlasting regret. Open your eyes and watch. Your empire will follow you to hell. Don't forget who killed you in front of the king of hell." The emperor widened his eyes and breathed his last. Xueqi pressed him to the ground and used all her strength to push the dagger into his heart. Then she cut to the side and pulled open the wound. "Your Majesty, open your eyes. Look, your blood is red, and so is your heart. I thought your heart had long been dyed black and filled with sludge." Xueqi put her right hand into his chest through the wound and said with a silly smile, "Your Majesty, open your eyes and take a look." Clang! The sound of something falling alarmed Xueqi. She turned her head abruptly. Her beautiful eyes were no longer seductive. Instead, there was only ferocity left. She looked like a ferocious ghost that had crawled out of hell. The eunuch was looking at her in fear. There was a tray of clothes at his feet. It was prepared for the emperor to escape with his life. Xueqi clicked her tongue and laughed. "You saw it?" The eunuch was so frightened that he fell on the floor of the carriage. He stammered for a long time before shouting uncontrollably, His Majesty is dead." His voice was loud and shrill. The surrounding guards heard it and felt a chill in their hearts. Their morale plummeted. The enemy took advantage of the situation to attack. "His Majesty is dead. His Majesty is dead. His Majesty is dead." The little eunuch rolled and crawled out of the dragon carriage, crying and wailing. When he got off the carriage, he even fell down hard, causing him to see stars. Ignoring the pain, he staggered to his feet and continued to run for his life, as if there was a terrifying ghost chasing after him. When the officials heard the news, they almost fell to the ground. Their faces were filled with disbelief. The rebel army hadn't even reached the center. How could His Majesty die? How was this possible? How did His Majesty die? Because of this eunuch's report, the imperial guards were distracted and their resistance was weak. Soon, they were torn apart by the rebel army and were utterly defeated. Amidst the chaos, the rebel general rushed all the way to the dragon carriage. He leaped onto the dragon carriage and lifted the curtain. His eyes almost popped out of his sockets. He saw a fat man in a dragon robe lying on the ground. Fresh blood flowed out of his chest, making him look like a piece of pork stained with blood. This should be the emperor. The general pondered and shifted his gaze to the peerless beauty beside the emperor. With just one glance, he felt that his heart had fallen into the other party's starry eyes, and he seemed to hear the sound of hundreds of flowers blooming in his ears. It was love at first sight. Admittedly, he had seen many peerless beauties, but in front of the woman in front of him, all the beauties in the world paled in comparison and became dull. I am the mother of the nation. General, you are being too presumptuous by looking at me so rudely. Huijun sat upright and secretly clenched the dagger in her sleeves. The blood on her skin had already been wiped clean by her. She had suffered too much humiliation in her life. She felt that it was dirty. Now that she was going to the underworld, she wanted to go clean and beautiful. The emptiness after getting her revenge made Huijun want to commit suicide. Living was too tiring. She was about to commit suicide when she didn't expect an unfamiliar rebel army general to barge in. This made Huijun's heart sink. However, thanks to the appearance of this rebel army general, Huijun regained her rationality and decisively gave up on the decision to quietly die. The previous Akeo had died long ago. The Huijun who lived was only for her Lang Jun, because this life was given to her by her Lang Jun. Unless her Lang Jun gave her permission, she had no right to dispose of this life, let alone commit suicide. No matter how difficult it was, she had to live. Mother of the nation? So you are the Empress. What a coincidence. The young general's eyes turned. His words were disdainful, but he secretly felt that it was a pity. Such a beautiful woman should have been treated carefully by the most magnificent man in the world. How did she end up with a man with a fat head and a pig's brain? Huijun looked at the man calmly. She smiled sweetly and her eyes were full of charm. I am the mother of the nation. General, are you going to treat me like a normal concubine? The man thought that Huijun would panic and cry or lose her composure and beg for mercy, just like the beautiful concubine who had been captured in the imperial city of Qinzhou. However, he didn't expect Huijun to have such a reaction. She didn't look like a prisoner at all. Not only did she not, but she was also arrogant. He was clearly looking down on her, but she was arrogant as if she was looking down on all living things, including him. Even he couldn't help but want to kneel at her feet to show his submission. This thought only appeared for a moment before he forcefully suppressed it. He laughed arrogantly. You are the mother of the nation and my spoils of war. Naturally, you will be treated differently from normal concubines. Huijun's heart relaxed. She had already sheathed the dagger in her sleeve. In a moment of panic, Huijun felt something tighten around her waist. Her whole body crashed into the man's chest and touched the cold and smelly armor. Beauty, I know you have a dagger in your hand. You can also use it to hurt me. Whether or not you can hurt me depends on your ability. As he said this, he smiled and bit Huijun's earlobe. His warm and husky voice was full of seduction. Huijun was also experienced. How could she not know what this man was planning? She secretly gritted her teeth and resisted the urge to hurt him. Now, self-preservation was the most important thing. She could bear with anything else. The man laughed and picked Huijun up and mounted the horse. The fighting outside continued. The rebel army's advantage was becoming more and more obvious. The rebel army and the imperial guards were fighting. Both sides were in a killing frenzy and didn't pay attention to the situation outside. The rebel army general felt very comfortable with such a beautiful woman. Just as he was about to pick up his weapon and continue killing, an inexplicable sense of danger shot from the soles of his feet to his brain. He couldn't describe the feeling. If he wanted to describe it specifically, it was as if there were eyes staring at him from all directions, making it impossible for him to escape. He raised his eyebrows and clamped down on the horse. Just as he was about to find the source of the danger, he saw chaos in a certain part of the battlefield. Huijun was leaning in the man's arms, accepting her fate. She calmly planned her next step. She knew that her face and body were the most irresistible attraction to men. If used well, she would be very safe. As she thought this, the man hugging her suddenly shouted and urged the horse to gallop in a certain direction. Hui Jun suddenly opened her eyes when she felt the jolt. Her bright eyes grew brighter and brighter, and her heart ached. Chapter 730. Lang Jun? The man's sharp ears caught Hui Jun's murmur. The anger in his heart was ignited, and his eagle-like eyes were filled with undisguised murderous intent. The silver spear was unbelievably agile like a spirit snake. It drew streaks of dazzling silver light in the air. Bright red blood, silver spear, and dazzling red tassels. One man, one horse, and one spear tore a hole in the battlefield. The silver spear came at them head-on. Flesh was torn apart by the sharp blade, and blood splattered everywhere. Before the rebel soldiers who were entangled with the Imperial Guards could react, their throats and foreheads were dyed red. Their heavy bodies fell to the ground, unconscious. It was like a wolf entering a flock of sheep. No matter how many sheep there were, they could not stop the momentum of the fierce wolf slaughter. Hui Jun bit her lower lip nervously. Her hands involuntarily grabbed the man's armor. As the shadows of the spear flashed, the silver light was accompanied by blood. Even her emotions fluctuated violently. "Is that your lover?" The man hugging Hui Jun snorted coldly. He raised his weapon and charged toward the man. "It's a pity that he's an overconfident brat. I'm afraid he won't be able to rest in peace." Jiang Pengji, dressed in red and silver armor, charged into the enemy's formation. It was as if there was no one there. "Brat, eat my knife." Even with Hui Jun on his horse, the man was not affected. He slashed at Jiang Pengji's back with his heavy long knife. However, Jiang Pengji was not someone who could be ambushed so easily. She casually blocked the attack. The weapons collided with each other with a heavy sound that made one's teeth ache. "You're quite strong," she sneered. She swept her spear horizontally, clearing away the enemies who came up to her. Then she charged toward the general. Little White did not disappoint its excellent bloodline. It was highly trained in war and understood human nature. It cooperated well with Jiang Pengji. It used its hooves to crush the chests and heads of several enemy soldiers. Its ferocious appearance did not reflect its usual shyness. Jiang Pengji chuckled. "Hui Jun, I'm here to pick you up." To outsiders, the young general's handsome face was stained with blood, but it did not look ferocious. Instead, it gave people the impression that it was upright and clean. "Lang Jun," Hui Jun replied with a trembling voice, her bloodshot eyes filled with tears. Just as she was about to lean forward, the hand that was restraining her waist suddenly tightened, pulling her back to reality. Hui Jun had never imagined that this person would actually appear at this time and personally fulfill the promise he had made many years ago. "You don't have to be afraid. When the dust settles, I will protect you." So she came here now. Her originally dead heart was now filled with fresh blood, allowing her to hear the thumping of her heartbeat. Such a beautiful atmosphere. There would always be people who didn't know what was good for them to spoil it. For example, the audience in the live broadcast room, for example, the enemy general. "Chinga Manwu, Sister Hui Jun, we're all here to pick you up. Let's go home. Little angel. Let's go home together. Almighty Ding Dang. You're so shameless. Carry my Miss Hui Jun and do a 100-meter sprint. Don't even think about coveting her." "Yan Rian. Huh. You stinky square-faced man. Let go of my big sister Hui Jun. Tianshui Xianla. I have a curse to say right now. Pervert. Where are your hands on Miss Hui Jun?" The audience in the live broadcast room had all sorts of crusades against the enemy general. The man took advantage of her, and the strength he used to hold Hui Jun's waist was almost enough to strangle her. Seeing this, Jiang Pengji directly attacked the man's face without saying a word. It seemed that she had no intention of caring about Hui Jun in his arms. The man laughed loudly and advanced instead of retreating. "You came at the right time." A young boy who hadn't even fully grown his pubic hair dared to snatch his woman? Clang! The sound of weapons colliding rang out. The ear-piercing high-pitched sound traveled into her eardrums. Hui Jun subconsciously shrank her head and closed her eyes. The man who was holding her was secretly shocked. He took a few steps back with his horse, and the horse under him even neighed in pain. How could Jiang Pengji give the other party time to react? Little White boldly rammed and bit the enemy's war horse. The silver spear in Jiang Pengji's hand turned into a shadow. She killed off the enemies that surrounded her, and she pressed forward step by step. The enemy did not dare to send out archers in consideration of their general's safety. Just as they hesitated for a moment, a cloud of dust rose from the distant horizon. Jiang Pengji rushed over on her horse. How late could her reinforcements be? The man who was holding Hui Jun gradually lost his strength. Sweat dripped down from under his helmet. After a round of fighting, one of his actions was greatly admired by Jiang Pengji and the audience in the streaming room. Both of them tacitly avoided Hui Jun. Jiang Pengji could forget about it. She had originally rushed over to save people. The man knew this, but he did not use Hui Jun as a shield. Instead, he did his best to protect her. This open and honest style won Jiang Pengji's favor. However, the audience was still determined to hate him. All men who fought with them for beautiful girls were heretics. The man was also surprised and depressed. His strength was already rare and tyrannical. After so many years, there were few who could match up to him. He did not expect to meet someone with even more brute force today. It turned out that he was a young general who had not fully matured. It was fine that he was born with divine strength, but he was also agile. The shadows of the spear were dense, like an impenetrable net. He, who had always been proud of his strength, did not dare to take it lightly. He could only barely resist. If it was not for the soldiers around him restraining the unfamiliar young general, the man felt that he would have lost even more miserably. He had to empty one hand to hold Hui Jun and the other to hold the weapon. It was already sore and limp from frequent collisions. The muscles on his arm had swollen to the point of showing signs of blood. Hui Jun also noticed the situation. She hurriedly and frantically said, "I'm sorry." At that moment, the man's attention was completely focused on Jiang Pengji. He could not spare any extra attention. Hui Jun pulled out a dagger from her sleeve and slashed the man's thigh. While he was panicking from the pain, she leaned over and pounced on Jiang Pengji. "Oh my, you're not afraid of death." Jiang Pengji carefully noticed Hui Jun's movements. She had long prepared to borrow him, but she still lectured him. The man who had been tricked by Hui Jun came back to his senses. A trace of unwillingness flashed across his face. However, he did not attack Hui Jun. Instead, he spat out a mouthful of bloody saliva and laughed wantonly. "You dare to snatch a woman from me? You have guts. Tell me your name. If I'm in a good mood, maybe I'll leave you with a whole corpse." Jiang Pengji protected Hui Jun in her arms. If she was allowed to stay on the horse, who knew if she would become a target for arrows? "Haha, aren't you afraid of cutting your tongue when you talk big?" Jiang Pengji dealt with the enemy troops with ease. At that moment, she had already tried to break out of the encirclement and regroup with the army. The rebels had no more scruples. Several cold arrows were aimed at her vital parts. Jiang Pengji lowered her voice and said to Hui Jun, "Hold me tight. Be careful." Chapter 731. Jiang Pengji gave Little White an order. Little White was as excited as if it was on drugs. It charged into the crowd with its hooves. Jiang Pengji cooperated and shot down the arrows that were sneaking up on her and Little White. Little White not only ran fast, but it also changed its speed midway. When its hooves kicked, it took away a life with each hoof. When the human and the horse worked together, they were like the god of death. The imperial guards nearby were helping to restrain the rebel army. They could not focus on her. Under such conditions, Jiang Pengji was even more skilled and at ease. The number of souls that died under her spear kept increasing. She and Hui Jun, who was in her arms, were almost covered in blood, but they were surprisingly unharmed. "Bring me my bow and arrows." The young general spat. His right hand, which was holding the weapon, almost lost all feeling. Watching Jiang Pengji's back gradually disappear, he knocked an arrow and drew his bow. He aimed at Jiang Pengji's back. The 2-stone-heavy bow was as light as a feather in his hands. The arrow left the bowstring and broke through the air. It was a dazzling arrow. At that moment, besides his arrow, there were dozens of other arrows. Jiang Pengji frowned secretly. She shot down the other arrows and hugged Hui Jun to avoid being hit in the vital areas. In the end, The arrow that should have pierced through her back brushed past her arm. Huijun witnessed the scene with her own eyes. She saw that Jiang Pengji's arm had an arrow wound. Her eyes widened and she clenched her fists. She developed a strong hatred for the general just now. She trembled and said, "Lang Jun, you're injured." Jiang Pengji said nonchalantly, "It's just a small wound. It'll heal in a day or two." It was not that she could not avoid the arrow, but Little White could not keep up with such extreme speed. She still had to worry about Huijun. In the end, she was injured, but it was only a small wound the length of a finger. If the arrowhead had been smeared with poison, it would have caused her some trouble. Unfortunately, the arrow was not poisonous, so she did not need to care. Little White quickly left the enemy's shooting range and quickly entered the area of their support. "My lord!" Li Yun and the others' horses were not as fast as Little White. Most of the troops still relied on their 2 legs to run. How could they catch up? On one hand, they were on tenterhooks, and on the other, they used all their strength to rush back. Their lord actually came back unscathed? With such a willful and reckless master, the life of the subordinates would be shortened by several years. My heart is so tired. I really want to quit. I'm fine. Jiang Pengji shook the blood off her spear and said calmly, "His Majesty's carriage and ministers are in front." When Meng Hun and the others heard this, they knew that the target was right in front of them. They led the army and charged forward like wolves and tigers. The Imperial Guards thought that they would definitely be defeated. How could they have known that reinforcements would come to their rescue? As if he had been injected with chicken blood, his spirit was roused, and his depressed aura climbed back to its peak. Everyone's morale was boosted, and they launched a counterattack against the enemy. The balance of the battle tilted in their favor again. When the enemy general saw this, his face darkened. Just as he was about to raise his weapon to fight, a cold-faced young man came charging at him. Li Yun could tell how dangerous this man was and immediately picked him as his opponent to prevent him from killing ordinary soldiers. Another spear user. The general had just suffered a loss at the hands of Jiang Pengji, and immediately a strange young general jumped out. This made him furious. Hearing the man's words, Li Yun retorted indignantly, "What's wrong with a spear? Did he eat your rice?" He had learned these words from his master, and they were the best at infuriating. In a battlefield, it was a taboo to be distracted and angry. Verbal provocation was also a tactic. The man was so angry that he laughed. He planned to teach Li Yun a lesson. There was nothing wrong with being young and frivolous, but he had to know his place. In terms of battlefield experience, the man was naturally a level higher. However, he had already been tortured by Jiang Pengji, and his condition was not even 30% of his peak. How could he fight against Li Yun, who was known for his speed? Li Yun's horse was not bad, but his horse was far from his opponent's ferocious horse. The situation was in a stalemate. However, the outcome of the battle was not something the two of them could control. The Imperial Guards and reinforcements directly beat Prince Chongshou's army to the point of tears. The man glared angrily at the direction Li Yun and Jiang Pengji retreated to. With a feint, he deceived Li Yun and turned to leave. "Don't go!" Li Yun was ashamed and angry. He had been tricked. When he regained his senses and was about to give chase, he was stopped by Meng Hun, who had rushed over. "Han Mei, don't chase a cornered enemy." Li Yun held back his anger. "Why not?" Meng Hun could only hurriedly say, "I know that person. You can't handle his sneak attack yet." If Li Yun dared to chase after him, he would definitely not have it easy. He might even be killed by the opponent. Li Yun did not believe it, but when he took a closer look at the man's retreating posture and his tense right arm, he was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. "You're letting them escape just like that?" Li Yun was exasperated. The military merit that was already in his mouth flew away just like that? Without a generous military merit, he naturally could not receive a generous reward. Without a reward, he could not fill his wallet. What would he use to marry a wife? Thinking of Shangguanwan's background, how could Li Yun's heart be described as gloomy? A stray dog will always have a chance. Meng Hun sighed. His eyes flashed with some emotion. "Let's go. Clean up the battlefield and report to the Lord." On the other side, Jiang Pengji also encountered a difficult problem. This problem was given to her by Huijun. Lang Jun, your servant killed the emperor just now." Hui Jun hesitated and struggled, but she still told the truth. At that time, if Hui Jun did not make the first move to gain the upper hand, the emperor would personally feed her poisoned wine or strangle her with white silk. She understood the emperor too well. He would rather be destroyed than let Hui Jun live. Why? Because he did not want Hui Jun to be tainted by other men. Rather than live, he would rather kill her with his own hands. Even in death, Hui Jun would protect his chastity. You killed him? Jiang Pengji frowned. She did not expect that the emperor did not die at the hands of Prince Changsho, but was sent to hell by Hui Jun's dagger. Hui Jun was about to ask for forgiveness. Lang Jun, your servant. If her death could help Jiang Pengji avoid trouble, she would gladly do it. But Jiang Pengji said, forget it. If he's dead, then he's dead. He's a piece of trash that will die sooner or later. The earlier he dies, the sooner he can reincarnate. It's not like he's the only emperor who can be emperor. If one dies, there are still millions of people waiting in line. What's there to be anxious about? To her, the emperor's death was far better than his life. Because if the emperor died, there would be more room for maneuvering. For example, the alliance could elect a young puppet emperor. Such an emperor would be easy to coax, trick, and manipulate. Similarly, this would also help her restore her identity. As for rescuing the emperor, her purpose in coming to rescue the emperor was to do business, poach people, and get the title of Wanzhou magistrate. That did not include keeping the emperor alive. Hui Jun killing the emperor had actually helped her greatly. However, as the person who had personally killed the emperor, her existence had to be well hidden. She could plan other things after the limelight had passed. Chapter 732. Jiang Pengji thought about it and decided to hide Hui Jun first so that she could fake her death to avoid detection. Looking at her face, Jiang Pengji raised her hand and wiped the wound on her arm, smearing Hui Jun's clean face with blood. I'll have to trouble you for the next few days. Once things settle down, I'll make sure that you don't have to worry for the rest of your life. Hui Jun felt the touch on her cheek. After a moment of silence, she said in a low voice, to me, Lang Jun is more important than a second parent. As long as Lang Jun says the word, even if I have to give up my life, I will have no complaints. I am willing to serve you for the rest of my life. Jiang Pengji raised her hand and pointed between Hui Jun's eyebrows with her index finger. Hui Jun looked up in astonishment, only to see Jiang Pengji smiling and refusing. No, there will be people who will treat you gently in the future. There is hope as long as you are alive, so why be so pessimistic? There's still a long way to go. Hui Jun clenched her fists in her sleeves and lowered her head. Yes. Jiang Pengji sent someone to strip a set of clothes off the corpse of the Imperial Guard and let Hui Jun change into it. No matter what, he had to get past this hurdle first. Once the limelight was over, he could change Hui Jun's identity. After finishing this task, he also ordered his personal guard to handle another matter. She asked the guards to search the battlefield to see if there were any female ministers who had been killed by accident. She chose a corpse that was closer to Hui Jun's and completely destroyed the face of the corpse. She changed it into Hui Jun's clothes and disguised it as Hui Jun's corpse. As for whether anyone would suspect it? Now, only those with big fists have the right to speak. Those ministers who only have a defeated army dare to make a fuss? My lord, His Majesty is already in heaven. Yan Lin glanced coldly at the messy battlefield and whispered to Yang Jian. Yang Jian's face was still filled with excitement. When he heard these words, he froze on the spot. Bin Tian. Yang Jian choked on his words and couldn't come back to his senses. His Majesty is in heaven. Xiaoyang, what should we do now? Yan Lin's tone was cold and decisive. Let's stabilize the situation first. Don't panic. We just need to cooperate with the alliance and the courtiers to elect a new emperor. If the emperor died, then so be it. In any case, the royal family had many backups. As long as the person who ascended the throne was Prince Changsho, everything would be fine. There were not many people or things that Yan Lin cared about. The so-called emperor was not one of them. In Yan Lin's eyes, the merit of supporting the new emperor was no less than saving the emperor's life. The former was easier. Yang Jian's heart felt stifled, but the emperor's corpse was already cold. No matter what he did, he could not change the truth. Both armies were well trained. Although they had never cooperated with each other before, they did not hold each other back. After working together to repel the enemy, no one pursued them. Instead, the first thing they did was to comfort the frightened ministers and their families. Feng Zhen, Yang Si, and Yan Lin were in charge of dealing with the courtiers. The work of using their brains was naturally left to these scholars. Xiao Yang, I sneaked a peek at His Majesty's body. He died a terrible death. It doesn't look like he was killed by the enemy. Yang Tao had taken advantage of the chaos to sneak a peek at the corpse. There was an exquisite and luxurious knife in the emperor's chest, and his heart had been squeezed out. Yan Lin looked calm. It doesn't look like they were killed by the enemy. Yang Tao nodded vigorously. It doesn't look like he was killed by the enemy. It looks more like he was assassinated during the chaos. Pieces of his heart are out. Jiang Pengji had arrived too quickly, and the situation was chaotic. No one knew what had happened in the chaos. There was only one enemy general who knew that Jiang Pengji had taken Hui Jun away. When Jiang Pengji rushed back with Hui Jun in her arms, Hui Jun was buried in her arms. Everyone thought she was a captive. According to the eunuchs who had served the emperor was not killed by the enemy, but by the empress. Yang Tao murmured with fear still lingering in his heart. The empress killed the emperor? If you are not a family, you will not marry into the same family. This empress is cruel. Don't pry too much into the royal family's private affairs. Don't dirty your eyes. Yan Lin's expression was calm and emotionless. Yang Tao replied obediently, Okay, I understand. The more I say, the more wrong I will be. I will speak less in the future. Jiang Pengji hastily treated her wound and wrapped her arm with a clean cloth. The battlefield had been partially cleaned up, but the corpses were still everywhere. Blood stained the ground, and the air was filled with the nauseating smell of blood. With her sharp eyes, she saw a few middle-aged men dressed as officials surrounding Yang Si and the others. They looked agitated and indignant. The demon empress must be killed. Regicide is a crime punishable by death. How can we let her go so easily? If we don't kill the demon empress, we won't be able to pacify the people. I hope you can send troops to capture her as soon as possible to comfort His Majesty's soul in heaven. Jiang Pengji walked forward, and the officials looked displeased. They were in the middle of a serious discussion, and this insensible young general dared to interrupt them? She was about to say that the commoners were not allowed to come near, but Yang Si and Feng Zhen bowed to her. My lord, who are we going to kill? We can hear it from afar. Jiang Pengji was satisfied to see the officials' expressions as if they had eaten a fly. His Majesty is in heaven, and the officials have said that the Empress is the murderer. But in this chaos, it's really difficult to find the murderer. Yang Si and Feng Zhen were tired of the officials. They had no ability, but they were good at commanding people. It was fine to give orders, but they were giving orders blindly. They and Yang Jian's troops had a total of 25,000 soldiers, and they had just suffered some losses. It was already difficult enough to protect the officials and their families with such a small number of soldiers. Later, they would have to escort the emperor's body back to the imperial city of Qinzhou and drive away the enemy troops in the city. They were severely understaffed. These officials, who took advantage of their seniority, wanted to overstep their authority and asked them to send troops to find the empress who had killed the emperor. Wasn't this telling Prince Chongshou? Come, we are understaffed. Hurry up and send someone to attack us? Thinking of this, Yang Si and the others didn't know what to say. However, these were all old officials in the court. They were old and respected, so they couldn't be treated lightly. They could only respond to them. Jiang Pengji's eyes moved, and she calmly glanced at the officials. Her eyes were calm, but the blood on her body and the murderous aura that hadn't dissipated made them nervous and subconsciously feel weak. Jiang Pengji stared at them and said, Their words are not unreasonable. His Majesty's death is a matter of national mourning. We can't let the murderer go so easily. As for the Empress, there seems to be a body that fits the criteria, but the body was almost trampled by people and horses, and it was beyond recognition. Only the clothes on the body can identify it. Why don't you go and identify it? The officials looked at each other. They were all experienced people, so how could they not see that Yang Si and the others were just being perfunctory? They were all prepared for a long war, but they didn't expect Yang Si and the others to be so easy to talk to. Thank you. The few old officials bowed and expressed their gratitude with great sincerity. Chapter 733. As soon as he finished speaking, 2 armored soldiers carried a simple stretcher over, one in front and one behind. Several ministers secretly craned their necks to see what was going on. The person on the stretcher was covered with a layer of white cloth, but there was blood dripping from the bottom. Pieces of flesh fell from time to time. This situation caused the eyes of the old ministers to twitch, and a bit of fear arose in their hearts. Before they could say anything, Jiang Pengji asked someone to remove the white cloth, revealing the corpse inside. The head was colorful. Blood and brain matter mixed with skull fragments. The body below the neck was no longer what it was. Only the color and material of the clothes on the body could be seen. One look and you could tell that it was not something an ordinary person could wear. The ministers' faces turned green, and some could not help but turn their heads and retch. They weren't the only ones who vomited because of the hardcore scene. Even Jiang Pengji's advisor was so shocked that his face turned pale. The bullet screens in the streaming room were overwhelming. The audience tried to use the bullet screens to cover up the horrible scene. The disgust index was off the charts. Pengji's wife: "Oh my God, I'm scared to death. The scene in the streaming room is scarier than a supernatural thriller." Xinjia: "Host, can we discuss something? Can you give us a warning before the high-energy scene?" Blood-stained Rose Thorn: "I forced myself to watch the scene of the streamer slaughtering her way in and out. In the end, I kneel before a corpse. To be honest, I'm so scared that my hair is about to stand up. I heard that Guojia is censoring the violence. Wouldn't the streaming room be forced to censor such a violent scene that could give people a heart attack? To be honest, the Ring of Death is not that scary. Gue Kai Guo Fengxiu: "The host streaming room has been running for so many years. It would have been censored a long time ago." And Chonghuan: "As an emergency nurse, I've seen many car accident scenes. I thought I had a high tolerance level and that there was nothing in the world that could scare me to tears, until I entered this live stream. I hugged my chubby self with a heartache." The audience in the streaming room had a big reaction, but Jiang Pengji was still indifferent. She had seen all kinds of scenes. This bloody scene was a piece of cake for her. She asked the old ministers calmly: "Look carefully. Is this the Devil Empress corpse?" A few of the old officials were as pale as snow. Some of them had to be supported to stand. They deeply suspected that Jiang Pengji was doing this on purpose. Even the corpse's mother wouldn't be able to recognize it, let alone them. They didn't have any special abilities, so how could they identify the owner of a corpse that had been trampled into mud? However, the Empress was indeed wearing this set of clothes. Looking at the person's height, it seemed to fit. An old official could not bear it any longer. He covered his face with his sleeves, unable to bear to see the tragic state of the corpse. Jiang Pengji secretly curled her lips into a faint smile. "You guys are so blind. Can't you see that this corpse has dirted the eyes of the noble? What are you still standing there for? Take the corpse away and bury it properly. We'll deal with it later. In my opinion, the most important thing right now is to take back the imperial city of Qinzhou as soon as possible and save those who haven't retreated yet. As for this corpse, it won't grow wings and fly away." The old ministers agreed. That makes sense. In any case, the demon empress was already a corpse and couldn't be any more dead. There was still time to settle the score in the future. The enemy's attack was too sudden. The people in the city barely had time to react. The emperor could only take the ministers and their families with him. The other officials had no time to evacuate and were all abandoned in the city. The longer they were delayed, the more danger they would be in. Just as Jiang Pengji said, they should turn around and fight their way back to the imperial city as soon as possible to minimize their losses. The emperor couldn't be the only commander in the imperial court. He had to rely on a large number of ordinary officials to support him. More importantly, the ministers exchanged glances with one another, their expressions so solemn that water could drip out of them. The emperor had passed away so suddenly that he didn't have time to leave behind any edicts for his successor. As the old ministers that the emperor had relied on, they had to choose a successor as soon as possible to stabilize the court. They couldn't let the traitors get away with it. The emperor had 4 sons. The eldest prince had been killed, and the second prince had cursed the emperor and the empress with witchcraft. After the truth was revealed, his mother's family was implicated, and the emperor ordered her to be exterminated. The second prince had also been imprisoned and died of an illness. Now, only the third and fourth princes were still alive. The fourth prince's legs had been crushed by a carriage. He was already a cripple who couldn't stand up. How could he ascend the throne? After careful consideration, only the third prince, who had been demoted to a commoner, was the most suitable candidate. But now that the war was in chaos, if they didn't go back to rescue him, the third prince might have already been killed. If that was the case, who would inherit the throne? It was easy to imagine that there would be a bloody battle. The ministers had a beautiful idea, but they didn't know that Jiang Pengji wasn't just there to rescue the emperor. How's the situation? Jiang Pengji whispered to Feng Zhen. Have you found out everything? Feng Zhen narrowed his eyes. He had found a chance to ask the eunuch and the palace maids about the situation. He had heard a lot of interesting things. He said, "My lord, I have found out everything. Of the four princes, only the third and fourth princes are still alive. But the fourth prince, Wu Jun, is a cripple with crippled legs. He won't have a chance to stand up in this lifetime. Therefore, the most suitable candidate is the third prince. The third prince's background isn't simple. His mother was from a branch of the Feng family. If he ascends to the throne, I'm afraid it will be troublesome." Jiang Pengji sneered. To put it nicely, they are a branch of the Feng family. To put it bluntly, they are unrelated blood relatives. So what if the third prince ascends to the throne? Will the Feng family use all their power to help him? Haha. Naive. It's more realistic to dream. She wasn't the only one who saw it clearly. The Feng family saw it even more clearly. Dongqing was rotten to the bone. There was no way to save it. Even if the third prince ascended to the throne, would the feudal lords, who had a lot of troops, surrender obediently? Just one question. Why? Why would the feudal lords hand over their lives? Because they had been living off Dongqing's salary for a few years? How shameless! Jiang Pengji continued, the Feng family is full of shrewd people. They won't take the risk. Dongqing is rotten to the bone. There is no way to save it. If they are dragged into the court's dispute because of the third prince, I'm afraid the Feng family, which has been passed down for thousands of years, will come to an end. Therefore, you don't have to worry about the Feng family. But Zisher is right. If the third prince ascends to the throne, it will indeed bring some trouble. If an adult emperor sat on the throne, it would indeed be more difficult for Jiang Pengji to be the official magistrate of Wanzhou. So the third prince, I'm sorry. Chapter 734. Cut the weeds by the roots? Jiang Pengji tilted her head and looked at him. She squinted her eyes lazily and opened her mouth. Do you even need to ask? If you don't cut the weeds by the roots, they will grow again in spring. I won't do something like nurturing a tiger and inviting calamity. Do it cleanly and cleanly. Feng Zhan was about to leave when Jiang Pengji suddenly remembered something and called out to him. Right, kill the fourth prince as well. Feng Zhen was surprised. The fourth prince was already a cripple with both legs. It was impossible for him to ascend to the throne. Despite his doubts, Feng Zhen didn't question her. The subordinates could only follow the orders given by their lord and run the errands. One death was death. Two deaths were also death. The third prince and the fourth prince died together, which could be considered as fulfilling their brotherhood in this lifetime. Jiang Pengji saw Feng Zhen walk away and sneered. Why did she include the crippled fourth prince? He was the son of the fake Wang Huiyun. She had the help of the system and wouldn't die easily. Who knew if she would come up with some evil plan to cure the fourth prince's legs? When Jiang Pengji killed the third prince, Wu Jun would be the only one left, and the throne would rightfully fall to him. She didn't want to cause trouble for herself. She had to be cautious. She couldn't do something like making a wedding dress for someone else. Haha, if Wu Jun's legs were really healed and she killed the fourth prince, would that time-traveler woman vomit blood? She didn't know if she would, but she would definitely be depressed. Iji Miji. Oh, my streamer is so cool as a villain. She directly murdered a prince. Awesome. Zhuge Liang Du. That's amazing. I feel like my worldview has been led into the gutter by the streamer. I actually thought she was super cool when she was secretly discussing the plot with Feng Zhen. This is probably the charm of a villain. It feels so good to beat up a little kid. I live next door. I surnamed Wang. How does the streamer look like a villain? Villains don't have a good ending. Our streamer is the main female lead. Lao Wang is not as good as Lao Songchong. How is she the main female lead? She's obviously the main male lead. She's so handsome that I can't close my legs. Zhan has a sword. What? Pengji, your majesty? All the other women have been taken away. When are you coming to marry Bao Bao? Xinyue. Say no more. Draw your sword. Love rival. Prince Changshuo's army was stopped midway and suffered heavy losses. They had no choice but to retreat to the imperial city of Chenzhou. They burned, killed and looted, almost releasing the most evil part of human nature. Smoke and fire filled the air, and the sound of crying filled the air. The once rich and luxurious capital was now filled with smoke and fire. It was a complete mess. Due to the military order, the enemy did not dare to make a move on the people of the rich and powerful families. At most, they would rob them of their money and maids. They did not dare to touch the proper madams and noble ladies, and the ministers and high-ranking officials also avoided them as much as possible. They were worried about these officials because Prince Changshuo still needed them to fill the ranks of the new imperial court. However, the soldiers would not care about the common people and the concubines and beauties abandoned by the emperor. The entire imperial city was in chaos. General! They had fought back. Should we go out of the city to face the enemy? The enemy general lowered his eyes and said decisively, "No, there are only 6,000 brothers left. Continuing to fight is futile." The deputy who reported the news had a sorrowful look on his face. "General, are we just going to endure it?" The general sneered. "Endure? Revenge is a dish best served cold. There will always be an opportunity. Retreating is just to find a better opportunity." A lack of forbearance in small matters would spoil great plans. When it was time to endure, one could not act impulsively. When it was time to give up, one could not be overcautious. The current situation was not in their favor. If they continued to fight, they would be completely annihilated. The best thing to do now was to meet up with the main army as soon as possible. The general decisively gave the order to abandon the city and escape. Before abandoning the city, he ordered his men to take away all the officials who had not escaped in time. Without these mainstay officials, the imperial court would be nothing more than an empty shell. How long would it be able to survive? Little did he know, his action had actually helped Jiang Pengji greatly. 2 hours after they left, Jiang Pengji and Yang Zhen's army arrived. The city was in ruins. The once luxurious palace was now in ruins. It was like hell on earth. On both sides of the road, there were many dead palace maids with disheveled clothes. Many eunuchs had died tragically, their heads separated from their bodies. "My lord, there are probably no more enemies in the city. We can send someone to do that first. It'll be easier to do it later." Feng Zhan had not yet entered the city. He looked at Jiang Pengji and said in a low voice, "We can't afford to lose this opportunity. If they did not kill the princes while everyone was distracted, it would be troublesome later." "Okay, I understand. Keep Yan Lin busy. Don't let him know." Feng Zhen chuckled. Yan Lin is not a simple man. Even if he knows, he will probably pretend not to know. As long as Yang Jian and Jiang Pengji's interests did not conflict, Yan Lin had no reason to stop them. Feng Zhan and Yan Lin commanded and stabilized the situation in the city. They put out the fires, rescued the people, and cleaned up the rebels. Yang Si was in charge of dealing with the old officials. He led his men to catch up with the main army and buy time. Their lord was an extremely daring person, and the counselor who followed her to fool around was naturally not as timid as a mouse. It was just killing 2 princes. So be it. Yang Si rode on the horse with a smile on his face. He did not have the slightest sense of urgency from the war. In the imperial city of Chenzhou, the 3rd prince was convicted of seducing his stepmother and causing chaos in the palace. He was expelled from the royal family by the emperor. However, his mother was from a side branch of the Feng family. Even though she was now a commoner, his life was not affected. When the imperial city was breached, he was still playing with the birds in the garden. It was not until the housekeeper came to report that he realized the situation outside had changed. He wanted to escape, but the city gate was occupied by the enemy. He could only change into commoner clothes and hide in the haystack of the stable. He barely managed to escape the calamity, but all the concubines, maids and manservants in his mansion were all killed. It was not that he did not hate them, but he was afraid of death. Even if his beloved concubine was being bullied not far away, he could not muster up the courage to fight to the death. It was not until the enemy had retreated and his mansion was in shambles that he carefully crawled out. The situation in the imperial city of Qinzhou changed quickly. In the blink of an eye, news came in. The alliance had sent reinforcements. The evil empress was dead. The rebels had been defeated. The emperor had passed away. The third prince's heart beat like a drum when he heard the last piece of news. His two older brothers were dead. His fourth brother, Wu Ma-jun, had no chance. He was the only one left. As for the matter of him and his stepmother causing chaos in the palace, he only needed to push the blame to the evil empress and he would be able to clear his name. The third prince's limbs were filled with strength when he thought about this. Only when a group of armored elites entered the third prince's residence did he feel completely at ease. "I am the third prince you are looking for." The soldier looked him up and down and asked in a low voice, "Are you really?" The third prince was infuriated and scolded the man. Although the third prince was not very capable, he had been raised in the royal family for many years. Ordinary people could not imitate his nobility. Chapter 735. When the third prince heard this, he felt that something was wrong, but he didn't take it to heart. But before he could take 2 steps, the leader of the soldiers suddenly stepped forward and blocked his way. The next moment, he felt a sharp pain in his chest. "I'll send you to hell. Please don't blame me, Your Highness." Amidst the pain, he vaguely heard the man's scornful and mocking voice. The third prince used all his strength to spit out 2 words. "You." He didn't finish his sentence before he breathed his last. His body slumped to one side. The soldier kicked the third prince. Seeing that he couldn't be more dead, he immediately threw the third prince's body into the well in the backyard. Once the body was in the water, it would be difficult to determine the time of death. When the time came, they just had to blame Prince Chongshou's army for the third prince's death. "Let's go. There's no trace of the third prince here, only a lunatic. Let's search somewhere else." 2 flowers bloomed, one on each side. The third prince breathed his last, but the fourth prince couldn't be found. Not only could they not find him, but they couldn't even enter the fourth prince's manor. The soldiers secretly reported this matter to Feng Zhen. Feng Zhen was surprised. "You can't find the fourth prince's manor?" The soldier felt wronged. It wasn't that they couldn't find the fourth prince's manor, but they could see it, but they couldn't enter. It was clearly that residence, but it was as if he had encountered a ghost and was unable to approach it. Feng Zhen didn't believe in supernatural powers, but this made him wary. "You can leave now. Keep a close eye on that place. Don't let anyone get close." Feng Zhen sent the soldier away in a low voice. After frowning, he found Jiang Pengji and briefly explained the problem at hand. "My lord, supernatural powers can't be trusted. But if the fourth prince is fine, he can use this miracle to build support for himself. The people and the court officials will definitely side with him. If that's the case, why don't we be ruthless and burn down all the mansions nearby? That will completely eliminate any future problems." Feng Zhen firmly believed that supernatural powers were fake, but there were too many ignorant people who were too easy to fool. Looking at the history of emperors, which of them didn't create 1 or 2 mythical stories for themselves? Otherwise, how could the words "the monarch's authority is bestowed by God" be true? After Jiang Pengji heard this, she smiled and asked Feng Zhen in return. "Burn all the nearby mansions?" That was a good idea, but what if fire didn't work? All of the nearby mansions have been burnt to ashes, and only the fourth prince's mansion is still intact. In this way, not only have we not achieved our goal, but we have also helped them build up their momentum. This wasn't some kind of supernatural power, it was just someone playing tricks in the dark. "It's just a trick, a mere swindler." Feng Zhen was astonished, but before he could voice his doubts, Jiang Pengji threw the matter in her hands to him. "Help me deal with this for a while. As for the fourth prince, I will personally send him to hell." If the soldiers could easily find the fourth prince, it meant that the time traveler did not think of using Wu Ma-jun. That was for the best. It would save her trouble. But now, the soldiers could clearly see the fourth prince's mansion, but they couldn't get close to it no matter what. This was thought-provoking. In ancient times, people would blame this on supernatural powers, but the viewers in the live stream room had a different way of thinking. Coca-Cola. When I heard the host say that she would send the fourth prince to hell, I feel like she's about to explode. She's so evil that I want to marry her. Pepsi-Cola. You're all smitten with the hosts too. 8-meter aura. Am I the only one who noticed Feng Zhan's words? I'm super curious. What happened to the fourth prince's mansion? Why did it look like ghosts were going around in circles? Could it be that there really are demons and ghosts in this world? Chuebo he. Even if there are demons and ghosts, our host can still tear them apart. What are you afraid of? Cling to the host's thighs. Lemon. Thinking about what the host said before, I feel that the fourth prince's legs might not be crippled. Moreover, the eldest prince, the second prince, and the third prince are all kneeling. Won't the title of emperor fall on his head? Even if his legs are crippled, ancient people were very superstitious. If the fourth prince is covered in a layer of myths and is blessed by the heavens, perhaps an exception will be made? Everything is hard to say. Ancient people always like to add myths and spirits to inexplicable phenomena. But in the eyes of modern people, it was mostly a show. If the fourth prince seized the opportunity, he might be able to make a comeback. Unfortunately, his opponent was none other than Jiang Pengji. She was a person who specialized in dealing with all kinds of demons, vulgarities, and scum. The fourth prince was not favored. After he came to Qinzhou, the fourth prince's wife, Lu Huan, gave birth to an ominous two-headed conjoined demon infant, which caused Wu Ma-jun to be demoted again and again. Because of various reasons, his mansion was located in the most remote part of the imperial city. The surroundings looked desolate and clean. The houses nearby looked more like haunted mansions. It was obvious how much the emperor hated Wu Ma-jun when he was alive. Jiang Pengji didn't alert anyone. She avoided all the spies and quietly moved closer. Looking at the mansion in front of her, not only was she shocked, but the audience was also surprised. Lula Wading. No way? This is the fourth prince's mansion? It doesn't look like it at all. Even a normal rich businessman is better off than this, right? Xinjia. After all, he's not favored and he doesn't have a family to rely on. He must have a hard time. It's normal for him to be poor. The audience in the streaming room was discussing the appearance of the fourth prince's mansion, but Jiang Pengji didn't care. She just frowned. The whole mansion was covered by a strange spiritual aura. It could affect the judgment of ordinary people. Bookworm Xiaoyin. Host, let's go and take a look. Let's see if it's really a ghost wall. Wanzhao Qingkong. We have to believe in science. We have to oppose all superstitions. Ghosts are just a trick to deceive people. Jiang Pengji observed for a while and suddenly laughed. It was indeed a trick that couldn't be used in public. It could work on ordinary people with weak mental strength, but to confuse her? It would be faster to refine it. Compared to the cold outside, the inside of the mansion was very lively. Wu Ma-jun hugged a few maids all day long and had fun. He was very carefree. Humph. You're still messing around here? He reached his hand into the maid's collar. His palm was soft. Seeing that a disharmonious scene was about to unfold, a cold snort suddenly sounded. It was as if he had been struck by lightning. He pushed the bewildered servant girl to the side and chased everyone out. He knelt on the ground and said respectfully, "Mother." A delicate and pretty figure suddenly appeared in the originally empty place. She was dressed in red. Her beauty was unparalleled. Her face was covered with gorgeous makeup, which made her look even more flirtatious. Chapter 736. You still know that I'm your mother? The woman in red snorted coldly. Wu Ma-jun confessed in fear and trepidation. After a while, he was moved to tears. Mother, what you said makes me feel terrified. The woman in red did not want to waste time with him. The Allied army has already entered the city. It's time for you to perform. Don't let me down. Facing such a merciless order, Wu Ma-jun was secretly resentful. However, he appeared docile and obedient with a strong sense of childlike admiration. I understand. I will definitely not disappoint Imperial Mother's expectations. A few days ago, this woman had suddenly appeared in front of him and claimed to be Wu Ma-jun's deceased mother, Imperial concubine Wang. Of course, Wu Ma-jun did not believe her. Although he had never seen Imperial concubine Wang, he knew that the dead could not come back to life. She did not talk nonsense with him. Instead, she gave him elixirs that cured his crippled legs in an instant. Faced with this fact, and recalling the way she had appeared out of nowhere, Wu Ma Jun's heart beat wildly. This was clearly a trick that only a deity could do. Regardless of whether she was his mother or not, based on the ability she had displayed, she was his biological mother. Relying on the magical powers of his biological mother, the enemy troops who had invaded the imperial city treated this house as if it was nothing. Wu Ma Jun's life had been very comfortable. Your father is dead, and so are your eldest and second brothers. Now, the only one who can compete with you is your third brother. The woman in red opened her red lips slightly. Her eyes were cold. She stood in front of Wu Ma Jun and looked down at him. She said arrogantly, "With me helping you, the outside world will think that you are the beloved son of God. I even cured your crippled legs. This is your confidence to compete for the throne. No one can be compared to you. When the time comes, I will contact the Wang family and ask them to support you. Then you can sit on the throne." Of course, the woman in red could not contact the Wang family again, but her words reassured Wu Ma Jun. When the emperor died, the most qualified person to inherit the throne was the emperor's son. Wu Ma Jun's heart was beating like thunder. He was so nervous that even his palms were sweating. He had never thought that the throne that he had dreamed of for so long would be so close to him. It was almost within his reach. All of this was thanks to the red-clothed woman before him. His birth mother. He said to the red-clothed woman, "Thank you, Imperial Mother, for your meticulous planning for me. Once I sit on the dragon throne, I will definitely make you the Empress Dowager." In the past, the woman in red would have been quite interested in the Empress Dowager. But now, she lacked interest. So what if she was the Empress Dowager? No matter how noble a woman was, she was still a widow. She could not do as she pleased like the emperor. "I am satisfied that my son has such filial piety." The sword of Damocles, Lu Shi, was hanging above her head. If she was not careful, it would fall and take her life. The most important thing now was to break this sword. The woman in red clenched her teeth in hatred when she recalled how she had failed to assassinate him while disguised as a dancer. Because of that operation, she owed the system 1 billion popularity points. In order to pay off her debt as soon as possible, she had been crazily doing quests during this period of time. She had even agreed to many excessively explicit requests from the audience. Her self-esteem had been repeatedly trampled on by the audience. Her hatred for Emperor Chen grew, and her hatred for the audience in the live broadcast grew. What was even more infuriating was that she could not throw a tantrum at the audience. If she offended these rich people, who would be willing to spend a lot of money for her? Later, she had a careful discussion with the system. To take Lu Shi's life, assassination alone was not enough. If her son, Wu Ma Jun, ascended to the throne, he would be able to use his status as the emperor to suppress Lu Shi. She would then take the opportunity to use the level 9 loyalty talisman on Lu Shi. If not for this, she would not have thought of Wu Ma Jun, her useless son. In order to cure Wu Ma Jun's crippled legs, she had no choice but to buy elixirs in installments from the system. At first, she was a little reluctant. The elixirs required too many popularity points. She did not want to bear the debt for Wu Ma Jun. However, the possibility of a prince with crippled legs competing for the throne was too small. He could easily be feared by the new emperor. Under the persuasion of the system, the woman in red gritted her teeth and bought one. Apart from that, she also spent some popularity points to promote Wu Ma Jun. She placed invisibility talismans around the mansion to ensure that ordinary people could not enter. This would not only protect Wu Ma Jun, but it would also create an illusion for others that Wu Ma Jun was blessed by God, and that he was God's favorite son. Who else in the world was more qualified than him to be the emperor? Ancient people were superstitious and stupid. As long as there was enough publicity, Wu Ma Jun would be gilded with a layer of gold. Now that the alliance had conquered the imperial city of Qinzhou and defeated Prince Changshuo's rebel army, it was time for Wu Ma Jun to show up. The strange mother and son were full of fantasies about the future. It was as if they could wear a royal robe and sit on the throne in the next moment. Unfortunately, "Oh, you really have 9 lives. I broke your neck last time, but you didn't die. Now you're alive again." A cynical voice came from outside the door. Wu Ma Jun and the woman in red were shocked. Their expressions changed. They looked in the direction of the voice. When they saw who it was, their expressions changed again. Lanting. Wu Majun looked at Jiang Pengji in surprise. He almost couldn't recognize her. Are you really Lanting? He and Jiang Pengji hadn't seen each other for years. He almost couldn't recognize the young general in red and silver armor as Lu Shi. Your Highness, long time no see. Jiang Pengji spoke to Wu Majun, but her mental strength was locked on the woman in red. She didn't dare to act rashly. You're my brother-in-law. We're family. Don't be so polite. Lanting, you don't have to be so polite. Wu Majun's intuition told him that Jiang Pengji didn't come with good intentions, but he didn't know why she was there. He couldn't afford to offend her. Therefore, he could only try to get to know Jiang Pengji and try to make her lower her guard. Brother-in-law. Jiang Pengji laughed and said sarcastically, I can't bear the title of brother-in-law, Your Highness. Wu Majun was surprised. What do you mean? What do I mean? You'll have to ask this wanton woman next to you what she did back then. Jiang Pengji smiled faintly. She stared at the woman in red. Her tone was cold and cruel. Wu Majun looked at the woman in red. She claimed to be his biological mother. He believed her on the surface, but he was still suspicious. Why do you want to ask her? Jiang Pengji said. Your Highness, there's something you don't know. Do you know why Lu Huan suddenly had a hemorrhage? Rumor had it that Lu Gui had given birth to a pair of conjoined two-headed demon infants. After giving birth to the children, she passed away. But do you know why the child was deformed? Because, how can a half-brother and half-sister have a normal child? Wu Majun's eyes widened. He was so shocked that he took 2 steps back. He felt like he was listening to a book from heaven. No, even a book from heaven was not that ridiculous. Lu Huan was Lu Shi's concubine's daughter. How did she become his half-sister? Chapter 737. I'm slandering you? Why don't you ask the person next to you for proof? Faced with Jiang Pengji's question, Wu Majun's expression froze. He could not suppress his fear and cower. Because you bully the weak and fear the strong, you only dare to confront me. You don't dare to ask her for proof. Her magical skills make you afraid, but at the same time, she gives you hope. You need to use her ability to ascend the throne. As long as you can ascend the throne, even if you never believe she's your biological mother, you can still crawl at her feet and please her like a dog. Am I right? Jiang Pengji stepped on Wu Majun's sore spot, word by word, poking his sore spot. I didn't. Wu Majun panicked. His eyes flickered and he did not dare to look at the woman in red. If you didn't, why are you feeling guilty? Jiang Pengji crossed her arms and sneered at the strange mother and son. She suddenly realized something and said, Look at my memory. Even if I'm feeling guilty, it's this woman who feels guilty first. After all, she's worse than scum. The woman in red was pointed at and scolded by Jiang Pengji. How could she stand it? She used the rippling subtle steps and floated like a fairy. Her palms looked feminine, but they contained a strength that could shatter internal organs. You want to kill me just because you can't win? But the question is, can you beat me? Have you forgotten how you died last time? Jiang Pengji dodged sideways and grabbed her collarbone with her right hand. She threw her to a corner of the room. If it was a man, he would have been seduced by the woman's beauty. He would be worse than trash in Jiang Pengji's eyes. She dealt with it easily, as if she was taking a stroll in the park. Her attitude made the woman in red hate and jealous. She could see that Jiang Pengji did not have any special martial arts, but she could beat her. How could this be? It was not fair. Who are you? Why do you know so much? The woman in red was so angry that her teeth were chattering. Haha, you don't even know who I am, but you dare to attack me. You're quite bold. Seeing the woman in red get up from the ground, Jiang Pengji clapped her hands and said to Wu Majun, So this woman hasn't told you the truth. Not long after she gave birth to you, she secretly hooked up with Prince Changsho. The two of them had an illicit relationship and gave birth to Lu Huan. In order to pursue wealth and power, she dumped Prince Changsho and abandoned Lu Huan. Lu Huan was adopted by my father. He recognized her as his daughter and raised her for more than 10 years. Do you know why my father was a fool and helped her raise Lu Huan? Think about it. Wouldn't it be delightful to see the children of one's enemy having an illicit affair? Wu Majun's face was extremely dark, and his hands were trembling violently. fear, shock, and indescribable disgust. His former wife, the woman who had a night of passion with him, the woman who was pregnant with his child, was actually his half-sister? Not only did they share the same mother, even their fathers were biological brothers. The image of Lu Huan's face and her protruding belly appeared in his mind. Suddenly, he felt nauseous and vomited. Wu Ma Jun wasn't the only one who couldn't accept reality. The lady in red couldn't accept it either. Even if she was the one who did all these things, she would still fly into a rage out of humiliation when it was exposed so openly. She thought that Lu Shi didn't know about her plan and the reason why she deliberately abandoned Lu Huan. She didn't expect Lu Shi to know from the beginning to the end. That man deliberately took advantage of her and played her. B***tse. The lady in red stared at Jiang Pengji with fear and hatred, as if she wanted to cut her into pieces with her gaze. Jiang Pengji sneered and raised her eyebrows slightly. She asked in return, B***tch? You're scolding yourself, aren't you? You should reflect on yourself. Who's the B***tch? What do I have to reflect on? The lady in red panted heavily. Her eyebrows were hideous because of hatred, which more or less ruined her picturesque appearance. Jiang Pengji smiled and tore off the lady's only cover in front of Wu Ma Jun. She sneered, a lone soul possessed Wang Huijuan's body and harmed Xie Qian and his son. In order to enter the palace for glory and power, she had an unclear relationship with the three royal brothers and gave birth to Wu Ma Jun and Lu Huan. Another crime was to allow the siblings to have an illicit affair. When you were in Zhongzhou, you always paid attention to the situation in Dongqing. Isn't Takshu, the maidservant in my residence, your informant? Don't you know that Lu Huan and Wu Ma Jun are engaged? It's been 3 years since their engagement. Do you dare to say that you don't know? You clearly know that they are half-siblings, but you still watch them get married and have an illicit affair. Can you explain why? The live streaming room immediately exploded. What did they hear? Sister Takshu was the informant arranged by this time-traveling woman? Not only was Jiang Pengji's live streaming room in an uproar, but Wu Ma Jun felt that his worldview had been shattered into pieces. He finally stopped the urge to vomit. He no longer had the thought of being an emperor in his mind. There was only one question lingering in his mind. Why? Why did she watch the siblings have an illicit affair? She was their biological mother. The lady in red did not answer, but Jiang Pengji did. She smiled and said, I think you're indifferent because Lu Huan and Wu Ma Jun are no longer of any use to you, right? The lady in red wanted to ignore it. So what if she was the one who did it? She gave birth to Wu Ma Jun and Lu Huan, but she would leave this world sooner or later. There was no need to invest too much emotion in them. Was it wrong to do so? She felt justified in her heart, but she soon realized that it would not work. She saw that the bullet screen in her live streaming room was full of condemnations against her. The rich people who supported her even said that they would not come anymore. I thought you were just a whore. Now I realize that you are a vicious whore. All right, I'm leaving. You can play around, but if you lose your life, I can't afford to play around. Sigh, although you are very good-looking, the Japanese ladies are not ugly. You are worse than them. Shameless, lowly whore. The lady in red was furious. She was on the verge of losing control of her emotions. Yes, I was the one who did all these things. At least I dare to take responsibility for what I did. I'm better than those whore who pretended to be a whore. The lady in red pointed at Jiang Pengji and said, Don't think that you are so noble. Go back to your mother's grave and ask her how lowly she was. She stole her own brother-in-law and pushed her sister to Meng Zhan. Now, how did Meng Zhan treat Gu Zhen? She deserved to be avenged. According to the memory of the soul search, the lady in red firmly believed that Lu Shi and Gu Zhen were a couple. However, Jiang Pengji was not so sure about this. If in the original history, Lu Shi and Gu Zhen had given birth to Lu Shi, then how could Wei Ci recognize her at first glance? Lu Shi was Lu Shi and Gu Min's daughter. Could different mothers and the same man give birth to the same daughter? There was no need to think about this. Chapter 738. When had their streamer ever been insulted like that? Jiang Pengji, the person involved, had yet to explode, but the live streaming room was already in an uproar. Huisho Fang's Wushang. Bring me my 40-meter machete. I'll chop this b asterisk teasich. Love the night. Is this person tired of living? How dare she scold the streamer? I'll slap this son of a bitch to death. Lao Ciji Lianming. Maybe she's tired of living. After all, the streamer has already killed her once. Mo Lonji. A woman with a golden finger is willful. I feel sorry for my streamer. She's just a salted fish who knows how to live stream. Qing Feng Shuiying. Ha ha ha, the person above, are you sure? The streamer is a salted fish who causes trouble everywhere. How many people are called daddy by her? Zhang Pengji tilted her head and raised her hand to pick her ear. She didn't seem angry at all. What a joke. If this level of trash abuse could make her mentally unbalanced, she wouldn't have lived until now. As a general, mentality was very important. Therefore, Zhang Pengji was still in the mood to probe the woman in red's words. Zhang Pengji rubbed her chin with interest. Her jade-like eyes were like deep pools of water. You just said, she deserves to be avenged? Does this she refer to my mother, Gu Min, or my stepmother, Gu Zhan? Or is it both? The woman in red sneered. Isn't it all the same? Yes, it's all the same, Zhang Pengji said. If that's the case, tell me, what did you do? The woman in red pressed her lips together tightly and didn't say a word. Zhang Pengji continued. My father said that Meng Zhan was still a gentleman. When he married my stepmother, he repeatedly promised that he would treat her well. But after a few years of marriage, Meng Zhan's words and actions completely violated his initial promise. I don't doubt my father's judgment. He and Meng Zhan were classmates and best friends. There was no conflict of interest between them. Meng Zhan didn't have to deceive him. So what did you do? The woman in red didn't expect Zhang Pengji to be so sharp. She felt a vague sense of guilt and excitement. She regarded Lu Shi and his wife as formidable opponents. They had fought many times. That was one of the few times she won. She smiled proudly. Gu Min's bridal chamber didn't bleed. In order for her to gain a firm footing in her maiden home, I sent her a gift secretly so that she could give birth in one night. Zhang Pengji's face turned cold. And then, on the night before Gu Zhan's wedding, she was ambushed by a small group of bandits on the way to the wedding. In the end, it was a close shave, but there were rumors that Gu Zhan had lost her virginity to the bandits. The wedding was just around the corner, so it was impossible for it to fail. You also know that men care a lot about things like falling red. There was no red on the wedding night. Meng Zhan wanted to endure it, but Gu Zhan got pregnant on the first night of the wedding. So, who does this child belong to? There was no paternity test in this era, and the unreliable blood test was still bullshit. Meng Zhan had always felt that he was under a cloud. It was hard for him to talk about it. He wanted to find a chance for Gu Zhan to beat the child and then let the matter go. In the end, Gu Zhan insisted on keeping the child, which became the first knot between the couple. Zhang Pengji laughed. Did you also do something to my stepmother's second child? The lady in red said. Meng Zhan has seen Gu Zhan fooling around with the servants in the manor. How could he not hate her? A stepmother would never do such a thing. The woman in red smiled sweetly. The appearance-changing pill is a good thing. Zhang Pengji's smile turned cold. You are indeed ruthless. You used such a shameful and unpresentable trick very well. So what if it's not presentable? Didn't your mother, who was like a white lotus, also fall? The woman in red sneered. If you didn't really hate my mother, I would have thought that you had forbidden feelings for her. Zhang Pengji sighed and asked one last question. One last question. Were you the one who hurt my mother 14 years ago? Did you almost kill her? The woman in red was about to answer, but she suddenly held back. I won't say. Zhang Pengji laughed. I know the answer even if you don't say it. It's rare to see someone as stupid as you in the world. The woman in red's anger that had just been extinguished burned again. She secretly squeezed the grade 9 loyalty talisman. The system secretly stopped her from doing anything. Host, now is not a good time to make a move. You are also not her opponent. Lu Shi's spirit is very strong. You must wait until she is defenseless or when she is seriously ill and weak. Only then will the success rate be 100%. She is still at her peak. The success rate of the grade 9 loyalty talisman is much lower than normal. Don't take the risk. Retreat first. As long as there is life, there is hope. The system also hated Jiang Pengji to the core, but it could not do anything to her. The woman in red finally regained some of her rationality. She swallowed her anger unwillingly and planned to secretly crush the deity's 1,000 miles talisman to escape. Jiang Pengji's spirit was very strong. How could she miss her little trick? The woman in red had just crushed the deity's 1,000 miles talisman when Jiang Pengji, who was a few meters away, suddenly appeared behind her. In the next moment, she felt a sharp pain in her neck. The sound of bones breaking reached her eardrums. Since you've revealed so much, I'll give you another chance to turn things around. See you next time. Jiang Pengji respectfully sent the woman in red off with a smile. She seemed very happy on the surface, but her heart was gloomy. She had done so many wrong things. Killing her once would be too easy. It would be better to keep her alive and play with her slowly. Seeing Jiang Pengji kill people and the woman in red disappear without a trace, Wu Ma-jun was so scared that he knelt on the ground. Both of them were monsters. When Jiang Pengji's gaze fell on him, Wu Ma-jun was so scared that he crawled on all fours. He wanted to leave this place. As long as he could live, he was willing to do anything. Why are you running? Before Wu Ma-jun could crawl 2 steps, he felt a strong impact on his waist. Jiang Pengji stepped on him. Lanting, don't kill me because of our past relationship. Lu Huan is not your biological sister, but we are siblings. Wu Ma-jun was so scared that his limbs felt weak. His lower abdomen loosened, and a warm orange-yellow liquid flowed out. Snot and tears flowed down his face. Seeing this, Jiang Pengji mocked him. Emotions are useless to me. Why don't you talk about benefits? Wu Ma-jun was inspired. He quickly said, Lanting, tell me what you want. I will give you half of the country as long as you let me go. Jiang Pengji smiled. If you want to talk about benefits, you deserve to die. Your Highness, who asked you not to be a 3-year-old? If he was a 3-year-old, she might have spared his life. Hearing this, Wu Ma-jun knew that Lu Shi would not let him go. Lu Shi, you will die. Wu Ma-jun was lying on the ground. Just as he was about to curse, a foot stepped on the back of his head and pushed him into the ground. Noisy. The foot exerted force and his head split open. Yellow, green, red, and white matter splattered all over the ground. Chapter 739. Dozens of miles away from the imperial city of Qinzhou, the corpse of a woman in red suddenly appeared. Her head was strangely twisted, and she died with her eyes wide open. Host, you're dead again. In the system space, the system's cold voice told the woman in red the news. She had been killed twice by the same person in the same way. How ironic. The woman's soul left her body and floated into the system space. Her face was pale, and she shouted angrily at the living room. Shut up. I know I'm dead. I don't need you to tell me this. After shouting, the woman scolded the system. Is this also my fault? I listened to your advice and gave up on using the level 9 loyalty talisman on her. Why did I still die? It's all because of the talisman you gave me. I didn't teleport her away immediately. I already crushed it. Why did Lu Shi still catch me and crush my neck? Isn't this your fault? The system was silent for a while, then warned the woman in red in an even colder tone. Host, I hope you can calm down. The system can't be wrong. The talisman can't be wrong either. The woman in red laughed coldly. If it's not wrong, why did I die? The deity traversing 1,000 miles talisman is a product of the cultivation plane. Its usage involves the realm of the mind and soul. Lu Shi's mind and brain are very strong, comparable to a cultivator's. She's not a cultivator and has no spiritual power, but she can use her mind to interfere with the activation of the talisman and delay the teleportation portal by 1 to 2 seconds. That is enough time for her to crush your neck. The woman in red was stunned. She asked the system after a while. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? If she had known, she wouldn't have foolishly used the talisman in front of Jiang Pengji. The system's tone was still emotionless. You have to buy any information about Emperor Chen, which costs a lot of popularity points. Although you are my host, as a fair and impartial system, I have no obligation to tell you this information. If you are strong enough, you can discover them on your own. Therefore, this is not the system's fault. The fault lies entirely with you. You are too weak. In the face of the system's reasonable answer, the woman in red could not refute it at all. She could only swallow her anger. After calming down, she had to face an even more cruel reality. She had died again. If she wanted to be resurrected, she would need to pay the system 1 billion popularity points in installments. Facing the increasing debt, she felt powerless, but she had to endure it. She gritted her teeth and said, "Humph, but it's not like I didn't gain anything. Lu Shi, just wait for the father and daughter to kill each other." While the woman in red waited for her resurrection, Jiang Pengji hummed a tune in a carefree mood. Feng Zhen was very surprised to see this. "My lord is in a good mood." Jiang Pengji made a gesture. People are in high spirits when faced with happy events. Your lord will be promoted soon. How can I not be happy? When Feng Zhen heard this, he knew that the fourth prince had been eliminated, and he immediately broke into a smile. "Congratulations, my lord. Congratulations, my lord." Feng Zhen half-jokingly bowed and congratulated her. He rubbed his hands together and said, "If my lord is promoted, can you give me some benefits? For example, last year's 7-day break? For example, fine wine, delicious food, and beautiful women? For example, gold, silver, and jewelry?" Jiang Pengji's smile disappeared. There are rewards, but vacation, delicious food, wine, and beautiful women. None of that. Feng Zhen was speechless. He had helped his lord so much. Why didn't he get these little benefits? He looked as if he had nothing left to live for. He could only accept his fate, put away his playful thoughts, and continue to work. After the looting by the rebel army, the entire Qinzhou imperial city was in chaos. Theft, rape, and looting were common. Yan Lin and the others quickly pacified the chaos in the city, rescued the remaining officials and their families, and protected the royal family. The former crown princess and a few of the royal grandchildren have been found, but the former crown prince's concubines and daughters are dead. It was good enough that they could protect the crown princess and the royal grandchildren. Who would have the time to care about the concubines and daughters? Yan Lin sneered and looked down. It's good that they've been found. What about the third and fourth princes? His subordinate reported, "We've sent people to look for them. I think we'll have news soon." Yan Lin furrowed his brows. He had a bad feeling about this. Although they had found the royal grandchildren, the officials were more concerned about the third and fourth princes' whereabouts. At the very least, these two were adult princes, while the other princes were still too young. After urging them several times, they finally found the two corpses at dusk the next day. The third prince's body was swollen from soaking in the well water. There was a knife in his chest, which was used by Prince Chongshou's soldiers. The third prince was easy to find, but the fourth prince was more difficult. There was a ghostly power that prevented them from entering the mansion. The power appeared strangely and disappeared suddenly. When they entered the mansion, they found the fourth prince lying on the ground. His head had been smashed by someone. He had died a horrible death. Feng Zhen secretly glanced at his lord and shivered. The fourth prince's head couldn't have been smashed by his lord, could it? In the next few days, they prepared for the emperor and the prince's funerals. Two of the princes met with misfortune, and the remaining royal grandchildren are too young. Who do you think will ascend to the throne? According to tradition, the entire country should mourn the death of the emperor. However, this was a special time, so they didn't have to be too particular. They only had to pay attention to the color of their clothes and tie a white strip around their waist. Feng Zhen was dressed in a solemn gray robe with a white strip tied around his waist. He looked less unruly and more serious and cautious. Yang Si was also dressed in the same attire, and his entire aura was even colder. He sneered. It doesn't matter who it is, as long as it's not Prince Chongshou or Hu County Chief Wu Ma Shang. What do you think? We think alike, Feng Zhen said. Prince Chongshou has wild ambitions, and Wu Ma Shang is also a troublemaker. The royal grandchildren are better. They were young, obedient, and sensible. They hadn't even reached their 20s, and they hadn't married yet. This meant that the young emperor couldn't be in power. The oldest grandson was only 11 years old, and the youngest was only 2 years old. According to the tradition, no one was more qualified than the eldest grandson of the emperor. Not only was he the eldest grandson, but he was also the eldest grandson. His status was legitimate, and his bloodline was pure. I'm just afraid that Wu Ma Shang won't be satisfied. Feng Zhen laughed coldly. So what if he's not satisfied? The alliance is full of old foxes. Unless they've been kicked in the head by a donkey, they won't support him. What was the benefit of supporting Wu Ma Shang? Even though there was merit in supporting the emperor, there was also merit in supporting the royal grandson. In comparison, supporting the older and more scheming Wu Ma Shang could easily give him military power if he wasn't careful. He would just be waiting to be stripped. What if he supported the young royal grandson to succeed the throne? If the royal grandson wanted to sit firmly on the throne, he could only choose to use the alliance's feudal vassals. Before he came of age, he wouldn't have any bad intentions, and he would be able to get more benefits. Considering the interests of the feudal vassals, Wu Ma Shang was definitely not a good choice. Chapter 740. Feng Zhen gripped his brush and used the candlelight to illuminate the bamboo slips. He had been working through the night, and he felt like he was about to cross his eyes. I had a nightmare last night. I dreamed that my lord was dressed in women's clothes. Yang Si, who was working overtime and had not had a midnight snack, heard this and said, "Ah, what a terrible nightmare." Feng Zhen and Yang Si often argued and disliked each other. There was only one person who could make them put aside their former enmity and form an alliance: their lord. What happened in the imperial city of Chenzhou was immediately spread to Prince Changshu and the allied army. Both sides had different reactions. Prince Changshu threw his head back and laughed heartily, his mood unprecedentedly carefree. Meng Zhan poured a bucket of cold water on him at this moment. "Your Highness, it's too early to be happy." Prince Changshu was already thinking about the coronation ceremony. He was upset that Meng Zhan had interrupted him, but he couldn't do anything about it. "Why do you say so?" Meng Zhan's tone was cold. "If one emperor dies, they can make another one." Prince Changshu's expression stiffened. He had originally planned to put the emperor under house arrest and let him write the imperial edict to abdicate. Now that the emperor was dead, the alliance army and other important officials had the right to support the new emperor. Thinking that the throne that he yearned for was going to fall into the hands of an unknown young boy, he was flustered and exasperated. Meng Zhan said, "There's no need to be angry, Your Highness. There's no way to make the emperor abdicate his throne to you. Why don't you proclaim yourself as the emperor?" After Prince Changshu heard this, his body trembled violently. He felt as if a clap of thunder had exploded beside his ears, causing his mind to become muddled. Proclaiming myself as an emperor. Isn't that treason? Prince Changshu wanted the legitimate throne, but had never thought of proclaiming himself as the emperor. Meng Zhan sneered in his heart. What was orthodox? What was treason? Which of the things that Prince Changshu had done was orthodox? Your Highness, there's no time to lose. Make a decision now. Meng Zhan said, "If we're late, we might not have this chance in the future." Prince Changshu was upset, but deep down, he agreed with Meng Zhan's suggestion. Proclaim himself emperor. On the other side, the allied forces were also dumbfounded by this news. Did Prince Changshu send a secret elite force to attack the imperial city of Chenzhou? Did Yang Jian and Lu Shi's armies arrive in time to save countless important ministers and their families? The emperor died while he was fleeing? With the death of the emperor, the entire nation mourned. It was not appropriate for the feudal vassals to continue drinking and having fun. They could only reluctantly change into dark clothes as a sign of mourning. Some people were concerned about the death of the emperor, while others were concerned about Lu Shi and Yang Jian's forces. Su Bei felt as though a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He finally didn't have to continue hiding the news, nor did he have to bear the attacks of the other feudal vassal forces. He could even hold his head high in front of Su Fei. From an outsider's point of view, Lu Shi and Yang Jian's actions were all under Su Bei's orders. Lu Shi and Yang Jian had made a great contribution this time, and Su Bei wanted to remember it. Little did they know that to Su Bei, this credit had fallen from the sky. It was free. Other than Su Bei, Lu Shi, as Lu Shi's father, was also congratulated by the crowd. Huang Song secretly said to Lu Shi, "Congratulations, Governor. I'm afraid no one can compare to Lanting's great contribution in saving the emperor." While many feudal vassals were enjoying themselves, Lu Shi had led his troops to the imperial city of Chenzhou. This was an achievement that no one could be envious of. There was a smile on Lu Shi's face as he dealt with the nobles who came to congratulate him. Lanting is still young and full of vigor. He doesn't deserve such praise. He still needs more experience. Although he spoke humbly, everyone could see that Lu Shi was in a good mood. Another person was also in a good mood. This person was the county chief of Shanghai, Wu Ma Shang. The emperor had passed away without leaving behind any edicts. What did this mean? It meant that his opportunity had come. Now that the world was in chaos, there was an urgent need for a king with prestige and ability to stabilize the world. Looking at the Dongqing royal family, who was more suitable than him? He knew that the emperor had other princes and grandsons, but Wu Ma Shang didn't think much of them. During critical times, special treatment was needed. The succession of the throne should also be flexible, and only the virtuous should be able to take it. And Cui followed Wu Ma Shang, coldly observing his emotional changes. He laughed to himself. In the current alliance army, the only forces that hoped for Wu Ma Shang to ascend to the throne were Wu Ma Shang himself and Cui. Every man for himself, and heaven and earth would destroy him. What substantial benefit would supporting Wu Ma Shang to ascend to the throne bring to the other feudal vassals? The answer was none. Therefore, Wu Ma Shang had celebrated too early. And Cui did not say this out loud. Instead, he went against his will and complimented Wu Ma Shang profusely. Wu Ma Shang was in a good mood. With a wave of his hand, he borrowed a lot of manpower, horses, and rations from Cui. The alliance army passed through Jiamen Pass and marched valiantly towards Chenzhou. They thought that they would encounter Prince Chongshou's main force, but unexpectedly, they were unimpeded along the way. They didn't encounter Prince Chongshou's army at all. The scouts investigated for several days and finally confirmed that Prince Chongshou had retreated to the border of Chenzhou. They didn't know what he was planning. Why did he retreat for no reason? Everyone was confused. Only a few people could see clearly. A storm is brewing, Fengju sighed as he looked at the sky outside the tent. Prince Chongshou is playing hard to get. Huang Song didn't understand. Playing hard to get? Cheng Jing said, it's not just playing hard to get. I think he has other plans. Huang Song looked at Fengju, then at Cheng Jing. Both of them had the same expression. Only he was still confused. He felt like his IQ had been crushed by the two strategists again. For the alliance army, Prince Chongshou's retreat was definitely good news. At least they didn't have to expend troops to fight anymore. The imperial city of Chenzhou had been through the flames of war. The city gates looked desolate and dilapidated. The residences in the city had been cleaned up, but traces of it could still be seen. The alliance army didn't move their troops into the city. Instead, they chose to station outside the city to reassure the people. Because many of the officials and their families had been taken away by Prince Chongshou, the court was short of manpower. Feng Zhen, Yang Si, Yan Lin, and the others took this opportunity to take up positions. After entering the city, the chief of Shanghai County, Wu Ma Shang, has been very active. He's trying to rope in the officials and vassals without any disguise. Idiot! Jiang Pengji sat paralyzed on the main seat, sprawled on the table without a care for her image. She looked like she had been hollowed out. She thought that she should bring a few more strategists with her next trip. At least they would have more manpower. Lu Shi drank his sake with a calm expression. He's still too eager for quick success. If he planned it step by step, it might be possible. The more impatient Wu Ma Shang was, the less likely they would choose him. How could an ambitious Wu Ma Shang be any easier to control than a son of the emperor? As they spoke, light footsteps came from outside. Huijuan's gentle voice sounded. Lang Jun, may I come in now? Come in. Lu Shi glanced at Huijun. His eyes were calm. Huijuan's appearance was only half the same as before. If she had been beautiful before, she was at most a delicate beauty now. Even if someone familiar came, they would only think that she looked familiar. They wouldn't suspect that she was the late demon empress. Chapter 741. There were 4 major evil arts in Asia: the Dai Nation sex-changing technique, the Japanese makeup technique, the Korean plastic surgery technique, and the Hua Nation's Photoshop technique. When the four great evil arts were activated at the same time, not to mention the enemy, even their own mother would not be able to recognize them. Huijuan's appearance was too eye-catching and could easily attract trouble. It was indeed necessary to conceal it a little. Lang Jun, the court attire has been prepared and delivered. Do you want to try it on and see how big it is? If it doesn't fit, I can alter it. Huijun came in with a stack of clothes and some accessories. Her posture was gentle and humble, without any hint of seduction. All right, I'll try. Jiang Pengji was also a district magistrate, but because of the special circumstances of her appointment, she had yet to wear a court uniform. However, she had to attend the emperor's burial ceremony and the new emperor's ascension ceremony, so she had to wear court clothes. Therefore, he could only ask people to work overtime to make a set. Looking at the neatly folded court dress, Jiang Pengji smiled and took it to the room in the back hall to try it on. In this era, the difference in status was obvious. Every detail could be seen. Clothing had already become a symbol to distinguish one's status. Looking at the scattered items, she closed the live stream room and put them on one by one, wearing a ribbon over her robe. After getting dressed, she came out and opened the live broadcast room. Lu Shi and Hui Jun were stunned when they saw the handsome young man walking out of the back hall. It really fulfilled the saying, "A gentleman is peerless in the world, and a stranger is like a jade." The audience in the streaming room had long been accustomed to Jiang Pengji's emphasis on personal privacy. None of them left, waiting for the streaming to resume. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, the live broadcast room opened again, and it was time for them to compete on hand speed and luck. Nongfu Shanquan Yudiangshuan. Oh, let me see, who is this elegant young man in front of me? Cafeteria Daffin Auntie. It's her. It was her. That's her. Our streamer. Jiang Pengji. Jianghu Baliansha. To the person above, you must be poisonous. I couldn't help but sing it out. Song of Black Mass. I've always wanted to see the streamer in court attire. I've been looking forward to it for so long, and now that I've finally seen it, I'm so touched that I'm crying. Happy spot, hee hee, but I'm looking forward to the host wearing a royal robe and a crown. Jiang Pengji couldn't be serious for more than 3 seconds. She shook the ceremonial tablet in her hand in disdain and furrowed her brows. When officials go to court with this thing, are they preparing to use this board to slap people if they can't beat them with words? As soon as she said that, the audience's bullet screen became countless ellipses. Lu Shi, who was drinking sake, almost choked. Lanting, don't joke around. It's fine if you say it in private, but you can't say it outside. Lu Shi coughed again. His daughter's way of thinking was indeed different from others. The tablet was used to make notes and cheat sheets. It was similar to a memo, but in his daughter's mouth, it became a weapon for fighting. If the officials were really like what she said, swinging the ceremonial tablet to hit people just because they couldn't agree with her, would the court still be able to hold court? Hui Jun also covered her mouth with her sleeve. She could not hide the smile in her eyes. In a few days, Longjuan's court attire will need to be changed again. The difference in status meant that the style, material, and accessories of the court attire would change greatly. Naturally, he would have to make a new one. You have a lot of confidence in me. Hui Jun nodded and lowered her eyebrows. Her cherry lips spread into a smile. No matter how good her makeup was, it still could not hide the unique elegance of her eyes. Lang Jun, you keep your promise. If I don't believe you, who else can I believe? Jiang Pengji laughed and threw the ceremonial tablet on the table. She said in a pleading tone, I can't continue with your words. Lu Shi watched silently eating melons, and silently reflecting. Did he give birth to a daughter or a son? It seems a little small. I'll take it back and change it. Hui Jun was smiling when a servant outside reported, My lord, the Crown Prince's manor has sent an invitation. They invite you to the manor for a chat. Jiang Pengji was stunned. An invitation from the Crown Prince's manor? Hui Jun was half kneeling to help her tidy up her accessories. She was also stunned when she heard that. It should be from the Crown Prince's wife. She was still the Crown Prince's wife. After the late Emperor's burial and the young Emperor's ascension, the Crown Prince's wife would be the Empress Dowager. Jiang Pengji frowned and threw the invitation on the table. She said, Why did the Crown Prince's wife send me an invitation? I'm not going. A sly look flashed across Huijuan's eyes. She raised her hand and picked up the invitation. She put it under her nose and sniffed it. Lang Jun, it's better for you to go. Zhang Pengji turned to look at her. Why? Take a sniff and see if there's a faint fragrance on it. Hui Jun handed the invitation back to her and said with a smile, the crown prince's wife can't stand the loneliness of being a widow. She wants to invite you to be her guest. If you miss this opportunity, you won't have another chance. Zhang Pengji's fingers froze. She and the 150,000 viewers in the streaming room were stunned. What? Hui Jun said with a smile. This fragrance is a secret fragrance used in the palace. The main fragrance is the Sleeping Beauty. It's made with 24 kinds of precious spices. It has a stimulating effect on the relationship between a man and a woman. The fragrance is sweet but not strong, but it can attract people's feelings. Lu Shi coughed heavily and stood up with his wine cup and pot. You guys continue chatting. I'm a little tired. I'll go back to my room to rest. Zhang Pengji was speechless. Lu Shi walked to the door and suddenly stopped. If you're going out for a banquet tonight, remember to come back before dawn tomorrow. Zhang Pengji was speechless. Father, do you remember that you gave birth to a daughter, not a son? Hui Jun blushed and said awkwardly, the crown prince's wife put this fragrance on the invitation. She's obviously inviting you to spend the night with her. Zhang Pengji sneered. Her husband just passed away and her father-in-law hasn't even passed the 7th birthday. She's already thinking about how to win over her husband? Hui Jun sighed softly. I've seen the crown prince's wife. She must be doing this for the sake of her legitimate son. The crown prince's wife was a woman in the backyard. She wasn't of noble birth and had limited knowledge. She didn't know that the feudal vassals were determined to support the young emperor. She only saw Wu Ma Shang jumping up and down. She was worried that her son's throne would be gone and her empress dowager would be ruined. Because of their sensitive identities, if she and her son couldn't become the emperor and empress dowager, they would die. In her panic, she could only come up with this plan. Of course, other than helplessness, this crown prince's wife had always been like this. According to your servant's understanding, this crown prince's wife isn't as well behaved as she seems. The crown prince is promiscuous and has countless beauties in his backyard. The crown prince's wife is lonely and has a fake relationship with the eunuchs who serve her. Now that the crown prince has passed away and the royal family is in trouble, she's even more unscrupulous. Hui Jun smiled. It's understandable that she wants to recruit you as her husband. As long as she could win over Zhang Pengji, it was equivalent to tying the Lu father and son to her side. In the eyes of outsiders, Lu Shi was a handsome young man who wasn't even 18 years old. The crown prince's wife had taken advantage of him. Does Lang Jun want to decline or accept this? She looked at the invitation and suddenly said to the outside, find someone to call Manager Feng here. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.